Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I've already cleared Naruto, but you let me travel through Douluo. Chapter 21. In the square in front of the Wuhun Palace, the air was filled with light smoke and dust, and the aftermath of the duel between the two titled Douluo had not yet completely subsided. What? How can you agree to him? This. The pale Jew Douluo struggled to get up and hurriedly spoke out, but was held back by Ghost Douluo. The latter shook his head and pointed forward. Lightling Douluo was looking at them with a smile, and there was an undisguised coldness in his one eye. The corners of Yu Guan's mouth were buzzing, but he couldn't say anything. He could only sigh and weakly shook his head. Su Chen has always been very steady, so why did he mess up on something like this? How could that old guy give you his soul bone? Little guy, don't you think about it anymore? Bibi Dong frowned, her burgundy eyes reflecting the reflection of the white-haired boy. Do you remember what I said before? Her meaning couldn't be clearer. The previous promise was not to mention 10,000 years of soul bones, even if it was 30,000 or 50,000 years, as long as Su Chen asked for it, she wouldn't be able to get it. Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. I still want to give it a try. The young man cupped his hands. Of course Su Chen could understand what Bibi Dong meant, but only children make choices, he wanted them all. Well, the beautiful eyes under the Pope's crown were slightly closed, and the long eyelashes trembled. Su Chen's choice was not wrong, or in other words, it was the most common choice. A proud genius, a precious reward that seems to be obtained without any risk. As a 6-year-old child, he is already very impressive with his previous performance. Only, Bibi Dong still felt some indescribable disappointment in her heart. Perhaps the young man's confident words, steady maturity, and completely different attitude toward himself gave her some wrong illusions. Yugon, Ghost, watch him. Bibi Dong waved her hands half-heartedly, and her pretty face regained its noble and cold expression. His Majesty the Pope. Zhu Douluo hesitated to speak. He always felt that Su Chen would not be so unwise. But in this situation, there is nothing more that can be done. This kid really wants to fight the Soul Sect. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. It's a common problem among geniuses, not to mention that they still have soul bones that last 10,000 years. I thought this boy was mature enough, but I didn't expect that he still couldn't resist the temptation of soul bones. Come on, even a titled Douluo can't resist, let alone a 6-year-old child. Everyone was talking a lot and looked at the white-haired boy with some regret. It's a good seedling, but it's a pity. You almost pointed at someone and scolded him earlier. Do you think he would stop clicking? Okay, let's invite our protagonist to enter. Lightling Douluo raised the corners of his mouth and clapped his hands. The tall man standing behind him quickly stood on the other side of the square. The white-haired boy shrugged and followed. Looking at the backs of the two people, everyone looked strange. Su Chen used the ninja training method studied with Orochimaru since childhood to train his body and soak in medicinal baths. When his peers were only about 1.3 meters tall, his height had already exceeded 1.5 meters and was almost 1.6 meters tall. The muscles are well proportioned and straight. But despite this, in front of the big man who was over 2.5 meters tall, he still looked extremely petite, like a wolf cub next to a tiger. It is no exaggeration to say that the former looked like he could easily kill Su Chen. The worry on Zhu Douluo's face became even stronger. They all believed that Su Chen would have no problem defeating a low-level soul lord if he exerted his full strength. However, the soul sect was different. You must know that the changes between each link are different. What a difference! What's more, this is the soul sect that Lightling Douluo found. How can it be compared to ordinary soul sects? He glanced at the Lightling Douluo standing beside them. The latter seemed to be paying attention to the field, but in fact, there was a vague energy that was firmly locked on this place. Obviously, the opponent will not let them take action easily. I can only hope that this kid will admit defeat soon when he sees that the situation is bad, otherwise, he may not be able to save you when the time comes. In the center of the square, the two stood 20 meters apart. I don't want to attack children, but I'm sorry but I can't refuse this order. The big man showed a helpless expression, and then took a deep breath. Be careful. Boom. The strong soul power exploded, and the robe on the upper body of the big man swayed, and then exploded instantly. Roar. The big man roared, and his already exaggerated muscles actually grew in size again, looking particularly terrifying. His short black hair stood up like steel needles, a layer of dark and ferocious scales gradually appeared on his body, and a long stick protruded from his forehead. The single horn shines darkly in the moonlight. 4 soul rings, 3 yellow, 1 purple, appeared one by one, shaking slowly. Although the ratio was not the best, the aura erupted from them far exceeded that of ordinary soul sects. Call. Breathing like a beast, the big man slowly lowered his body and stared at the white-haired boy with his dark beast eyes. Martial Arts University. Level 40 Fighting Soul Sect. Martial Soul Iron-Horned Rhinoceros, please give me some advice. Iron-Horned Rhinoceros. The moment they heard this name, the whole audience was in an uproar. It's actually this martial spirit. This is terrible. I didn't expect Lightling Douluo to be so cruel. Shish, don't talk nonsense. Alas, it's just a pity for a genius with full soul power. It really corresponds to that sentence, a genius who grows up as a genius, otherwise. Everyone sighed, almost putting an end to this test and the young man. After all, this is the iron-horned rhino. Rhino-type martial souls are also among the best martial souls among beast martial souls, usually with good defense, attack power and endurance. The iron-horned rhino is different. Not only is its defense weak, but its endurance is also very poor. But losing these, in exchange for extremely exaggerated attack power and destructive power. The first 3 rings of the iron-horned rhino martial soul will only have 3 of the same soul skills, that is, power enhancement. This allows their attack power to reach an imaginable level. And when it reaches the soul sect, this martial soul will usher in an even more exaggerated qualitative change. The 4th ring will inevitably awaken another soul skill. Destruction Charge. With the blessing of the first 3 soul skills, the power of this soul skill can reach an extremely terrifying level. Among the same level, it will hurt if touched, and die if hit. Even if it is 1 level higher, it will be seriously injured if caught off guard. This is a martial soul that is extremely biased. Asshole, you must stop immediately. Ju Douluo's face changed drastically, staring at Guangling Douluo, the anger in his heart was like substance. If it weren't for Ghost Douluo's desperate obstruction, he would have rushed up to stop the game at this moment. A trace of worry flashed in the beautiful eyes of His Holiness the Pope, and his jade hands were clenched in his long sleeves. Don't worry, maybe our genius will create a miracle. Hee hee. Facing Yu Guan's almost cannibalistic eyes, Guangling Douluo felt extremely comfortable in his heart, and even Ju Douluo's scolding seemed so beautiful. He smiled at Bibi Dong, who had an expressionless face. Your Holiness the Pope, don't you think so? It's not over yet. Bibi Dong narrowed her beautiful eyes and glanced at Guangling Douluo. Don't rush to make a conclusion, Elder Guangling. Compared to Yu Guan, who was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, Bibi Dong's worried heart gradually calmed down. Because she saw Su Chen's eyes. The dark pupils flashed brightly, as calm as when they first met. Bibi Dong suddenly remembered the boy's confident attitude, and a ridiculous idea suddenly popped up in her mind. Maybe, he can win. Thank you for your reminder. In return, I will also give you a friendly reminder. The surging airflow blew up the boy's silver hair, revealing his dark eyes. The seemingly thin body was like an old tree rooted, unmoved. Please give your all, and don't underestimate me. Buzz. The strange fluctuations swept the whole place. In the white light, everyone felt that the soul power in their bodies shrank slightly for a moment, as if they had encountered an absolute superior and a natural enemy that frightened them. The flowers and plants in the distance swayed joyfully, and the leaves and flowers were brighter. The boy stood in the moonlight, with a faint smile on his handsome face. A circle of deep purple soul rings slowly moved around his body, emitting a frightening aura. Su Chen, Level 15 Combat Soul Master, Martial Soul, Chakra. Please teach me. Gulp. The sound of swallowing saliva sounded in the square, and everyone stared at the dazzling purple with dull faces. It was too late to question the suppression of soul power brought by Su Chen's strange martial soul. At this moment, everyone's eyes were only focused on the purple halo shining on the boy. Are you kidding me? This is fake. Soul Master, how could a Soul Master be possible? Even the great worshipper back then. God, I must have seen it wrong. The elders and senior officials uttered dreamlike mumblings, and some even shook their heads and wiped their eyes, suspecting that there was something wrong with their vision. But no matter how they looked at it, no matter how many times they looked at it, the deep purple still existed. When they were completely sure, they all took a breath of cold air. 1,000-year soul ring. It was actually the first soul ring of the 1,000 years. No, impossible, this is impossible. Guangling Douluo's pupils shrank sharply, and the teacup in his hand was instantly crushed by him. He stared at Su Chen, with veins on his forehead and ice crystals on his eyes falling rapidly. This was simply a subversion of his cognition. Is it a real 1,000-year soul ring? Bibi Dong's beautiful eyes were absent-minded for a moment. Although she had some guesses and preparations in her heart, when she really saw this scene, she was still shocked and excited, and even a faint blush appeared on her pretty face. She grasped the scepter tightly to curb the surge in her heart. As a genius who can be called the top genius in the continent, no one can understand what this means better than her. This is an existence that subverts common sense and subverts all soul master theories. Looking at the people who looked like they had seen a ghost, Ghost Douluo and Chrysanthemum Douluo smiled bitterly at each other. Do you know how we felt at that time now? We both felt that our worldviews were broken at that time. This. Wu Da looked at the purple soul ring with trembling body, his eyes full of disbelief, his lips trembling and unable to say a word, and his footsteps subconsciously stepped back. He was not good at thinking, and he was completely confused at this moment. After a while, he shook his head and looked at Guangling Douluo outside the field helplessly. Even if Wu Da didn't know much, he knew what kind of existence a person with the first ring of 1,000 years was. He also knew what the consequences would be if he killed such a person. That was a consequence he absolutely could not bear. Maybe Wu Da's expression was too obvious. Guangling Douluo finally came back to his senses, and then his face changed suddenly. This kid is only 6 years old and has the first ring of 1,000 years, what about the second ring? 10,000 years. What about the third ring? He didn't dare to think about it anymore. I'm afraid that within 20 years, this kid's strength will be close to his own. And now, he has completely offended this kid to death. If this kid is allowed to grow up, Su Chen will definitely not let him go. Guangling Douluo's single eye flashed with an uncertain light, and a moment later, a crazy idea appeared in his mind. As long as this kid dies, even if he is a great priest, he will not embarrass me too much because of a dead person. Wu Da, do it, don't forget your family. After weighing for a moment, Guangling Douluo gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, and released his martial spirit at the same time. A longbow shining with ice crystals appeared in his hand, the temperature around him dropped sharply, and cold snowflakes fluttered down, turning into a translucent light shield, blocking Bibi Dong in front of him. Her Majesty the Pope was stunned for a moment, and before she recovered from the excitement, she instantly understood Guangling Douluo's plan, and her beautiful face instantly became extremely cold. You are looking for death. Almost at the same time, the huge spider phantom rose from the ground, and the sharp claws carried the violent breath of death and stabbed Guangling Douluo fiercely. Too late, ha ha ha, puff. The light-winged Douluo who endured the blow spat out a large mouthful of black blood, but showed a miserable and crazy smile. With the speed of the iron-horned rhino, he only needed to stop it for a moment, and he could break the boy into 2 pieces. Bibi Dong didn't care to continue attacking, and suddenly turned back, her pretty face turned pale in an instant. Wu Da's face was full of pain, but the 4 soul rings lit up one after another. Power amplification, power amplification, power amplification. I'm sorry, kid, but I can't let my family die in front of me. Wu Da roared in pain, and a layer of black mist wrapped around his body. The black horn became bigger and shining, and the terrifying sharp momentum came towards him. A faint breath of death locked the silver-haired boy. Destruction charge ah. Crack. The hard bricks and stones shattered under Wu Da's feet, like a speeding locomotive, carrying hundreds of tons of cargo, rushing towards Su Chen at full speed. Stop. Yu Guan's hysterical roar reached the boy's ears, but Su Chen had no time to analyze it at this moment. The single Magatama's Sharingan slowly turned, and Wu Da's figure slowed down a little. The boy raised his hand to make a substitute seal, but then slowly put it down. Just right, I also want to see how high my positive power is now. Su Chen took a deep breath, and the purple soul ring suddenly lit up. The first soul skill, Linlong's helmet. Buzz. Raging chakra surged into his limbs and bones. In an instant, the silver-haired boy felt that both his strength and life had increased dramatically. Dragon's armor. All attributes increased by 50%. But the young man did not stop because of this, but stretched out his hand to press on his acupuncture points. 8-gate Dunjia formation. The third disciple gate, open. Boom. An extremely strong momentum exploded with the young man as the center, kicking up a cloud of dust. Su Chen's silver hair stood up, a faint crimson appeared on his skin, and his whole body was wrapped with a green sheen. Powerful. Incomparably powerful. Su Chen could feel that he could now kill the previous Millennium Wolf Beast with one punch. 30 seconds is enough. The young man silently felt the chakra consumption rate in his body, and slowly clenched his fists. Pong! The bricks and stones under the young man's feet exploded instantly, and the spider web-like cracks were densely packed and spread 3 meters away. His whole body turned into a blue meteor and rushed towards the galloping iron-horned rhinoceros. Ha 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 ha, God is really helping me. Light Ling Douluo, who was struggling to withstand the attacks of Bibi Dong and Yuguan ghosts, saw this scene, laughed wildly, and simply removed the protective shield. At this point, even a titled Douluo couldn't save him. Boom! A violent roar exploded in the square, gravel flew everywhere, and dust flew everywhere. Bibi Dong ignored the attack and stared closely at the square. When the smoke and dust dissipated and the scene inside was revealed, even with Bibi Dong's psychological quality, he couldn't help but freeze in place. Seeing that Bibi Dong and Yuguan Ghost did not continue to attack, but looked at the scene blankly, Light Ling Douluo knew that the matter had been successful. His Majesty the Pope, I'm sorry for this. I think you can punish me. He looked very embarrassed, but in fact he was deliberately disgusting Bibi Dong. After waiting for a long time, he found that His Majesty the Pope ignored him, and even the elders who were still struggling began to turn their eyes away. Light Ling Douluo gradually had some bad premonitions in his heart. When he turned around, he saw an unforgettable scene. That little man was surrounded by green energy, but he blocked the huge rhinoceros shadow that was several times his size and charged with destruction in the middle. Kaba. A tooth-piercing friction sound sounded between the two of them, cracks appeared under their feet, soul power rose, and smoke and dust dispersed. Green and black intertwined, forming a vague stalemate. The huge black rhinoceros shadow kept roaring behind Wuhan University, but it could not make an inch forward. Impossible. Wu Da's heart was shaking wildly, and he looked at the white-haired boy in front of him with fear, only reaching his waist. The latter's eyes had turned an unknown red at some point, and he was holding his horn with one hand, letting him he exerted all his strength to activate the soul ring, but the hand was firmly welded to his horn and remained motionless. Did I remind you? Buzz. The young man whispered, and in the other hand, the blue light took shape and turned into a high-speed rotating energy ball. Don't underestimate me. The soul sect was blocked by the soul master. Or is it a martial spirit like iron-horned rhinoceros that focuses on impact and power? Hiss, the first ring of 1,000 years is serious, is it such an exaggeration? You ask me, I don't know either. Quote, while the elders were still wondering who to help when Bibi Dong and Guangling fought, the situation on the field made them take a breath. Light Ling Douluo had a vague premonition when he saw Bibi Dong's expression. When he heard this, he felt a chill in his heart. Blocked. Impossible. There must be a limit to being a monster. His neck felt as heavy as lead, and he twisted it with difficulty, and then his pupils suddenly contracted. The young man's silver hair was dancing, but his petite body was firmly rooted in place like a mountain, blocking the shadow of a black rhinoceros several times larger than him in front of him. Wuda, what are you doing? Light Ling Douluo's handsome face was filled with red blood, the veins on his neck were like twisted snakes, his one eye was bloodshot, and he roared angrily. Stab. The sharp spider claws stood in front of him, only one step away from the vital point of the 5 worshippers. The figure under the Pope's crown stood in the air, his beautiful burgundy eyes filled with murderous intent. Enough is enough, Guangling, she said coldly. Yu Guan and Gui may also release their martial spirits, Juhua and Gui Ying at the right time, blocking the elders whose expressions had changed. However, even so, Light Ling Douluo still stared at the field. What if this stinky woman is allowed to be arrogant for a while? As long as that kid dies, everything can be undone. Come on, Wuhan University. Finally, under his immense expectation, Wu Da's body finally moved. Only, boom, a sudden burst of blue light made Wu Da seem to be hit by a meteor. His huge body flew into the air and spun upside down faster than when he came in. He crashed through 2 stone fences and dragged on the rock floor. A long ravine emerged before he could stop. When the smoke dissipated, Wu Da had already lost his spirit-possessed state. He was lying in the ravine covered in bruises and fainted. Quiet, deathly silence completely enveloped the square, and breathing could be heard. One move, the iron-horned rhinoceros, known for its strength and impact, fell to the young man's move. There is no skill, no strategy, just an absolute head-on attack. The high-ranking audience members only felt like they were in a dream. Looking at the young man standing in the moonlight, people realized that his clothes were not messy. Is this the strength of the first soul ring in 1,000 years? Absolutely incredible. If this kid doesn't die, maybe even being titled Douluo won't be his end. This is God bless my spirit hall. They had a hunch. In the next 10 years, Su Chen's name will be heard throughout the entire continent. Somebody come. Bibi Dong shook the scepter in his hand, and a group of neatly dressed Wuhan Palace judicial officers surrounded him. Take Guangling down and lock him up. The Pope gave a cold shout, and green light emerged from his hand, binding the light-feathered Douluo who was stagnant in place. The latter did not dodge, but just stared at Su Chen. The Pope's Majesty, 5 enshrinements are made to him. The law enforcement captain looked at Guangling Douluo hesitantly and refused to step forward. Lightling Douluo has been building up his power in the spirit hall for a long time, so he really didn't dare, but this was an order from the Pope, and he had to obey it. Crueling the future of Wuhan Palace and attacking the Pope, what, aren't these crimes enough? Bibi Dong's pretty face was covered with frost, and the shadow of the spider behind him slowly moved forward. Being stared at by the huge spider, the law enforcement captain felt like he was covered in cold sweat. He hurriedly bent down and bowed, and then hurriedly took Guangling with him. Go down. The latter showed no resistance throughout the whole process, and just stared at Su Chen firmly, his single eye full of inexplicable meaning. Seeing Guangling being taken away, Bibi Dong felt relaxed immediately. Indescribable joy surged into her heart, and she looked at the silver-haired boy with burning eyes. This child is really his lucky star. Elder Guangling may no longer be able to point fingers at himself now. Overall, there was nothing wrong with his decision, but the mistake was that he did not have an accurate understanding of the child's power. Who would have thought that instead of exaggerating, Zhu Douluo was even a little conservative? The previous disappointment was quickly thrown away. Looking back now, Su Chen clearly did what he did with complete confidence. You really gave me a problem. You have helped me so much. How should I reward you, Su Chen? The Pope murmured to himself. A faint blush appeared on his pretty face, and he was extremely beautiful. Call. Su Chen, who hurriedly dismissed the state of the 8-gate Dunjia and the dragon armor, paused and felt his brain was slightly dizzy. He stopped there for a moment and finally felt better. As expected, it's still a bit reluctant. The body is too small, too weak, and the amount of chakra is not enough. It seems that we need to have a laboratory as soon as possible to study ninjutsu and soul power. The boy moved his sore arms and said with some emotion. In the eyes of others, this battle is easy for him, but only he knows how dangerous this battle is. First of all, this state of attack power comparable to that of the soul sect can only last for 30 seconds. For one more second, the 8-gate Dunjia and the dragon armor will completely drain him. Wuhan University also suffered from insufficient information, otherwise the outcome of the tug of war would still be unknown. Of course, when he didn't have a large-scale field control spirit skill, he could still delay a stick of incense just by relying on the teleportation technique, but that would look a bit too embarrassing. Boy, are you okay? Yu Guan and Gui Mei rushed over quickly. The former supported him and involuntarily released his soul power to explore. Su Chen was helpless and wanted to break free, but now he had no strength at all, so he could only be touched by this man who was more beautiful than a woman. After a moment, Zhu Douluo breathed a sigh of relief. He's fine. He's just a little exhausted of his soul power. He just needs to cultivate himself for a few days and he'll be fine. Before Su Chen could say anything, he slapped the young man on the shoulder with excitement. As expected of you, you can actually do this. Hey, tell me honestly, did you know before the war started? You can win, so that's why you agreed. Let's just say, how could this kid be so uncool? No, just make sure you don't lose. Su Chen shook his head. Soul Sect strength is not that simple. He just happened to meet a partial subject who was beneficial to him and didn't understand him at all. No matter what, the current soul power is still too low. The power of the Rasengan is among the same level. Even great soul masters and even soul masters can cause effective damage. However, the soul sect is a little reluctant. It must be the dragon armor and the 8. Only with the blessing of Mendunjia. Oh, forget it, you don't know how ugly that old guy's face is. Douluo laughed loudly and patted his shoulder hard. He then remembered something and took out something and handed it to Su Chen. Nuo, this is for you. This is your trophy. In his palm lay a long red crystal, which was the 10,000-year soul bone that Lightling Douluo took out. Yu Guan smacked his lips in envy, but then he laughed happily. Losing a carefully trained dead soldier, and also losing a 10,000-year soul bone, ha 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 ha, the old man will probably shed tears at night, ha 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 ha. Ghost Douluo on the side looked at him helplessly. Be careful what you say, after all, I have 5 offerings. Why am I laughing? He won't mention 5 offerings this time. It's not certain whether the elder can do it or not. I'm doing this for your own good. With no time to pay attention to the quarrel between the two, Su Chen's attention was completely attracted by the soul bone at this moment. After holding it in his hand, the vague feeling finally became clear, causing his heart to beat faster and faster uncontrollably. My perception is indeed correct, this is natural energy. Natural energy is a special kind of energy. Unlike chakra extracted from cells, it floats between heaven and earth. Mountains, plants, soil, and insects may all be attached with natural energy. This is a disordered, huge, frenzied and almost endless energy source. And closely related to natural energy is a power that can compete with real gods. Sage Mode. In this mode, the power of the original ninjutsu and physical skills will be increased to several times or even more than 10 times the original. It is also the only means in the ninja world that can harm the 6th path level under the 6 paths. Therefore, whether in the ninja world or Douluo continent, this is Su Chen's first-tier research project. However, he spent decades in the ninja world to integrate the immortal arts of the 3 holy places. When he arrived at Douluo continent, he found that the situation here was more complicated. Because he couldn't feel natural energy at all. Although his immortal body was not fully awakened, it also had an affinity for natural energy, but he still couldn't feel any trace of natural energy. Su Chen had once imagined whether the spiritual energy absorbed by this world was natural energy. But in the end, he overturned his own assumption. After all, there was no threshold for absorbing spiritual energy and turning it into soul power, and it was not similar to natural energy that could easily turn into stone. Su Xiao had taken him to lush forests and desolate wetlands, but naturally he got nothing. I thought that the sage mode would be extinct in this world, but I didn't expect that today, I would find the long-lost familiarity on this soul bone. Sage mode. The boy's eyes were burning, and his palms slowly clenched. Whether it was the Sage Method wind-style Rasengan Shuriken that could completely destroy things to the cellular level, or the Sage Method Name God Gate that could suppress the 10 tails, or even the Sage Method Wood-style True 3000 Hands Top Buddha that was as powerful as destroying the world, they all had to rely on the Sage Mode to activate. And now, this road that I thought was cut off unexpectedly appeared in front of me. How could it not make people feel excited? Hey, kid, why are you so excited? Yu Guan's voice pulled him back from his thoughts. When he looked up, he saw the latter looking at him strangely. Ah, it's okay. I was just a little excited when I saw the 10,000-year soul bone for the first time. Su Chen coughed lightly, put the soul bone into the storage soul guide, and casually perfunctorily passed it over. Yu Guan raised his eyebrows suspiciously. The boy's statement was fine, but he always felt that this scene had a familiar sense of déjà vu. Just when he wanted to ask more questions, he saw Bibi Dong and the elders coming over, and hurriedly bowed, Your Highness. No need to be so polite. Bibi Dong smiled slightly, bent down and helped Su Chen up. You are still young, you don't need to bow when you see me in the future. Yu Guan. No. He looked at Su Chen, who just bowed with a confused look, and then looked at himself, who was bent to 90 degrees, and suddenly felt a little sour in his heart. This kid just took away the position that was most favored by His Holiness the Pope. What should I do if I suddenly regret it? Su Chen, you are really my lucky star. Tell me, what reward do you want? A faint blush appeared on His Holiness the Pope's pretty face, and his wine-red eyes shone with luster. He reached out and gently touched the boy's cheek, and a sweet scent came to his face. From Su Chen's perspective, he could even see some full curves outlined by the Pope's robe. No, why did you, a woman, do it? Feeling the slightly cold and smooth feeling on his face, Su Chen's whole body was stiff, and he raised his head in a bit of a daze. The white-haired boy jumped back suddenly, and even subconsciously used the instant body technique. When he was out of Bibi Dong's attack range, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But the next second, Su Chen's body stiffened again. Because the slightly cold and smooth feeling returned to his face, and this time it even pulled his cheeks more excessively. The young man looked at the perfect woman in front of him in disbelief, and saw the smile in her wine-red eyes. As if to say, do you think you can run away? Do you still have a sense of boundaries, woman? Is our relationship so good? Your Holiness, please respect yourself. Su Chen arched his hands and said dryly, while taking another step back. This time, Bibi Dong did not follow up, but just covered her mouth and chuckled, blinking her eyes. Why, our Wuhun Hall's first genius, is he still shy? This is him. No, isn't this your personality? Aren't you cold and heartless? Also, how old is your daughter? Why is she not mature at all? Although this posture is indeed amazing. Su Chen helplessly held his forehead. Raising Bibi Dong's favorability was part of the plan, otherwise, he wouldn't have to offend an enemy that he couldn't fight at this stage. That promise was Su Chen's goal. Now, the promise was in hand, and the favorability was also raised, but I don't know what went wrong. This favorability seems a bit exaggerated. It has far exceeded the part of the partner. What went wrong? Su Chen looked at the Pope with a gleaming look in his eyes, and sighed with a headache. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Elders, let's go back and finish the rest of the things. The Pope stood up and regained his noble and cold appearance. He nodded to the elders, who were shocked, and returned to the Pope's palace. By the way, little guy, you should come and listen. After the end, I have something to tell you. At the end, she waved her hand and said. The elders looked at Bibi Dong and then at Su Chen, with an indescribable strangeness on their faces. They had never seen the Pope so relaxed and happy. This kid can't be the Pope. Forget it, forget it, forget it, I dare not say it casually. This kid really resists contact with me. In the Pope's palace, Bibi Dong's mind flashed Su Chen's expression of resistance and disgust, and the corners of her mouth curled up a little. What a unique little guy, I haven't been so happy for a long time. A trace of loneliness and pain flashed in the eyes of the Pope, and he leaned on the Pope's throne somewhat powerlessly. In fact, Su Chen's guess was right. Now is indeed Bibi Dong's most difficult period. However, it is even more difficult than he imagined. Although Qian Douluo did not kill Qian Zunji in revenge, the threat of death has always been hanging in her heart. Because the angel Douluo, who has been famous in the world for a long time, has never concealed his naked killing intentions towards her. Otherwise, how dare Guangling Douluo to be so arrogant and give orders to her, the Pope, again and again? In Guangling Douluo's view, she is just a puppet who was forced to take the position. But despite this, she has to work hard to devote all her energy to this place that makes her disgusted. Otherwise, Bibi Dong knows very well what the fate of a murderer who has no use value will be. She wants to live. She wants to destroy this place with her own hands and completely exterminate the angel lineage. Not only that, she and that beastly son were carefully taught and guided by Qian Douluo, and their relationship with her mother was as cold as ice. The spies also kept sending news that the person she loved and her cousin were traveling on the continent together. Every time she thought of it, Bibi Dong felt heartbroken and wanted to die. The high pressure of the life and death crisis, the indifference of her own flesh and blood, and the betrayal of the person she cared about, it can be said that Bibi Dong was on the verge of collapse. If it weren't for the obsession of revenge that became stronger and stronger in her heart, she would have found a place to end her life. And now, Su Chen's appearance is like a blazing light inserted roughly into her gray world. Not only did the terrifying talent make her see the hope of revenge, but the concept of the spirit hall also made her feel like a confidant. More importantly, it destroyed Guangling Douluo, the shadow hanging over her head, and swept it away. Although it was only a trivial victory, it was a long-lost breath, allowing her to breathe fresh air. And the unique reaction to her also made Bibi Dong feel full of fun. What a cute little guy, it would be great if he showed up earlier. The Pope listened to the elder's report on everything, but his beautiful eyes inadvertently looked at the small figure in the corner, and a gentle smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This feeling of being stared at. Su Chen, who closed his eyes and thought about natural energy, raised his head alertly, and met a pair of wine-red beautiful eyes, and then scratched his hair in pain. It's not over yet. After the lengthy meeting in the Pope's palace ended, Su Chen was the first to run out. In addition to not wanting to be dragged around by a group of people asking questions, he also felt that Bibi Dong's mental state was a little not right tonight, so he decided to let His Majesty the Pope calm down for a night. As for what he would exchange for Bibi Dong's promise, he had already thought about it, so he was not in a hurry. Only, boy, His Majesty the Pope invites you. Su Chen sighed and looked helplessly at Yu Guan, who was standing in front of him. The latter had a foul face and looked at him with displeasure. Can you not go? Su Chen struggled a little. What do you think? The expression on Yu Guan's face became dangerous. I don't even get this kind of treatment, so you kid is just having fun, and you still look unwilling. Okay, I knew it. The white-haired boy spread his hands and sighed again. He really didn't want to see Bibi Dong tonight. Yugon. I'm so angry, I really deserve a beating from this kid. After bypassing the papal palace and walking along the exquisitely carved stone path for about 300 meters, a unique garden came into view. The elegant fragrance came with the morning breeze, which made the young man's fatigue lessened a little. The white fish belly in the east dispersed the last trace of darkness in the sky, and Su Chen realized that the night had passed. A lot of things happened last night, but, thinking of the soul bones in the soul guide, a smile appeared on the boy's lips. The harvest is also quite large. We're here, go in. When he arrived at the door of the garden, Yu Guan said something dull and stood aside with his arms folded. Aren't you going in? The young man asked doubtfully. Yugon, what do you mean? Of course I stopped here because I was not allowed in. Go quickly, don't keep His Majesty the Pope waiting. Zhu Douluo glared at him angrily, turned his head and ignored him. Interview alone. Su Chen was really helpless and hoped that this woman would restrain herself. You must have a sense of boundaries as a person, and show the demeanor of the boss in the first scene of Douluo. Don't act like a little girl who has never seen the world. But it's right to think about it. If you have really seen the world, how could you fall in love with someone like Yu Xiaogang? The garden has lush foliage and fragrant grass, and is exquisite but not crowded. Walking on the tree-lined path, Su Chen felt that his chakra circulation speed had become a little faster. Hey, it's actually a mimicry training environment. The young man's eyes lit up and he looked around with interest. He had always been interested in things that could increase the speed of cultivation, especially since it was used by the Pope, so it must be the most advanced kind. In an instant, many research topics popped up in his mind, such as the speed of chakra refining, the speed of spiritual energy cultivation, and even the absorption speed of natural energy. Can they be increased here? Also, what is the principle of the mimetic environment? Can't you make a simple core and take it with you? Can multiple environments be superimposed? Thinking of this, Su Chen couldn't wait to start research on the spot. Do you like it here? A slightly magnetic and pleasant voice came from his ears. The young man nodded subconsciously, then reacted suddenly and directly activated the teleportation technique. Then, not surprisingly, there was a smooth and tender touch on his face again, and a slender jade hand was gently squeezing his cheek. In front of a titled Douluo like Bibi Dong who has twin martial souls, the instant body technique released by him with his current strength is really not enough. Fortunately, Su Chen had another trick. Snap, smoke rose, and Su Chen, who was still in his hand just now, instantly transformed into a flower, while he himself appeared 3 meters away in an instant. Interesting abilities, you are indeed a very interesting little guy. Bibi Dong blinked her big burgundy eyes, put the flower in her hand on the ground, thought about it, picked it up again, and inserted it into the vase in the pavilion. Your Majesty the Pope, please don't touch anyone casually. Su Chen looked with a headache at His Majesty the Pope, who had already changed his outfit. The latter was wearing a pink nightgown, with her long, smooth gradient hair falling down like a waterfall. Her delicate collarbones and half-shoulders were exposed. The loose nightgown could not hide her proud figure, and she lost a bit of her usual nobility and coolness. Beautiful, a little more tired and lazy. In short, there is no character that a big boss should have, and there is no sense of boundaries. If you like it, you can come here to practice in the future. Bibi Dong did not answer the boy's question. Instead, she blinked her eyes playfully. By the way, you haven't told me what you want. You have to think carefully before making a request. You only have this one chance. Of course, I can pretty much satisfy you whatever you want. She meant something. Of course Su Chen knew what Bibi Dong meant. Just like in the Pope's palace, even if he said he wanted 100,000-year soul bone, the other party might satisfy him. But he also knew that if he really made such a request, the relationship between the two people would soon return to its original state. After all, Su Chen was very aware of what he had done. A 10,000-year soul bone was already an unexpected surprise, but a 100,000-year soul bone was a bit ungrateful. Now Bibi Dong is in an inexplicable state of mind, so naturally nothing will happen to her, but when she calms down, this greedy attitude will definitely make people unhappy. Even though he won't lose any resources, it will be difficult to trust each other. Moreover, Su Chen has already planned for his future. If this soul bone is not suitable for him, it can only be used to study natural energy at this stage. That would be a bit wasteful. So, I've thought about it. After a moment, the young man raised his head, his dark eyes shining with a certain light. I need a laboratory that is well equipped, earthquake-proof, waterproof, impact-proof, eavesdropping-proof, and has enough space. Yes, this is Su Chen's request. Compared with soul bones or other treasures that can't help him much at this stage, this request is the most appropriate. Only by relying on the huge power of Wuhun Palace can such a large laboratory be supported. After all, Su Chen checked and found that the materials required for some equipment are really not cheap. With a laboratory, many of his things can be developed. Wait, what did you say, laboratory? Bibi Dong's beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of astonishment, whether it was this brand new term or the boy's request. Little guy, don't you understand what I mean? I mean, you can make any request, such as a higher level soul bone than yours, or for me to take you to hunt for higher level rare ones. Soul rings, treasures, rare soul tools, or even peerless beauties. In short, do you understand what I mean? She simply stopped trying to hide it and said it outright. The first words sounded normal to Su Chen, but when he heard the last one, he suddenly felt that the Pope was full of bad taste. He is only 6 years old now, so he needs a piece of cake for a peerless beauty. Thank you for your Majesty's kindness, but I have my own plan in mind, and I want this. He shook his head and cupped his hands. You are so. The Pope sighed helplessly, but visible to the naked eye, the smile on her face became gentler. A young man is neither humble nor arrogant, neither arrogant nor impetuous, and he can resist temptation in such situations. What an outstanding little guy. Okay, please explain this first. Well, what is the laboratory used for? What a fresh name, though, lab. Experiment. The Pope frowned slightly, suddenly thinking of something very bad. After listening to Su Chen's explanation of the laboratory, her frown deepened. So, is this laboratory just for studying some theories? The boy's description and the feeling of his eyes shining when he talked about the so-called experimental research brought back some not-so-good memories in her mind. Do you know how high your talent is? These empty things will only waste your talent. If you can concentrate on training, within 20 years, you will definitely surpass me and become the youngest titled Douluo. Even if you want 100,000-year soul bone, it's not like I can't satisfy you. Although she was already getting anxious, Bibi Dong still patiently explained to the young man. Thank you, Lord Pope, I have a plan in mind. Su Chen secretly sighed that Bibi Dong actually directly mentioned the 100,000-year-old soul bone, which was enough to value him. But it is a pity that the laboratory is also very important. To him now, it is more important than 100,000-year soul bone. Snort. Bibi Dong's pretty face suddenly turned cold. She snorted and turned away. After a while, she couldn't help but turn around. You like to study these things, so you must have heard the name of the master, right? Mentioning this name again made her feel a little uncomfortable, but in order to let this outstanding child take the right path, she had to face her scars. Yeah, I heard it. Su Chen nodded calmly. An ignorant, incompetent, pitiful and pathetic guy. Ignorant, incompetent, pitiful, pathetic, are you talking about the master? Does the Yu Shaogang I know have something to do with these adjectives? The boy's answer was completely unexpected by Bibi Dong. That person is known as the person who has studied martial arts the most, and his theories are quite famous in the martial arts world. He was born in the Blue Lightning Overlord Dragon sect, one of the 3 upper sects. Although he is not taken seriously, he has also reaped all the family dividends. Otherwise, what qualifications does such a person who cannot break through level 30 have to come to Wuhun Hall to see her? Now, even if he left her, he hooked up with his cousin again in the blink of an eye. He also traveled to the mainland with his friends and gained quite a reputation. It can be said to be extremely chic and unparalleled in scenery. Well, although the little guy said this made her feel secretly happy, but no matter what, she still had to seek truth from facts. Although Bibi Dong was somewhat resentful towards the master, personal emotions aside, Bibi Dong also admired his theoretical ability. After all, strictly speaking, she is also a beneficiary of the master's theory. It was also because of this that she had a crush on this man who had no future. If Su Chen was determined to study it, he would have to show him the master's theory. Little guy, Yu Shaogang's research is actually quite impressive. Although I don't want you to study martial arts theory, there is probably no one in the martial arts world who is more proficient than him in this matter. Bibi Dong sighed a little lonely. If you think about it again, if you still want the laboratory, I'll give you his notes. Having said that, His Majesty the Pope actually has no hope. Su Chen is different from other peers. He is a very thoughtful, mature and determined child. Once such a person makes a decision, he will not be easily influenced by others. It seems that he can only slowly change his mind in the future. Bibi Dong thought to himself. But what surprised His Majesty the Pope was that the young man smiled slightly and did not answer her directly. Instead, he asked him a question. His Majesty the Pope, what do you think of my soul skills? What does this little guy want to express? There were doubts in her heart, but Bibi Dong quickly gave her answer. Exquisite, exquisite, perfect. The youngest titled Douluo in history gave a very high evaluation. But His Majesty the Pope believes that the boy is fully capable of taking on the first soul ring and soul skill. Whether it's the magical escape soul skill, the speed increasing soul skill, or even the blue light ball that can temporarily increase strength and power, it all shows that the young man is extraordinary. Thinking of this, Bibi Dong felt a little jealous. Even though she had 100,000-year soul ring, she didn't have so many abilities. Then what if I say? A mysterious smile appeared on the young man's face, chakra surged, and the purple soul ring shone with intense light. His tyrannical aura erupted instantly, and translucent white aura shone and rose from his body. The dragon's armor. Without the cover of the energy of the 8 gates Dunjia, this enhanced soul skill showed its original posture for the first time. Is this the only soul skill I have? Bibi Dongzhang was wondering why Su Chen released his soul skill. Hearing this, he was stunned for a moment, and then his beautiful eyes suddenly widened. He stood up suddenly and looked at the young man in disbelief. What did you say? Perhaps because he stood up too fast and the Pope's clothes were a bit casual, Su Chen inadvertently caught a glimpse of the 2 plump breasts bouncing a few times. See no evil, see no evil. The young man coughed dryly and waved his hand to disperse the dragon armor. As you can see, this is the only soul skill I have from beginning to end. This makes sense. There really should be only one soul skill for 1,000-year soul ring. But the problem is, the boy has displayed more than one ability. So these are not soul skills, they are. The rosy little mouth under the Pope's crown seemed like it could hold a cherry. She stared blankly at the young man, her beautiful eyes full of incredible shock. Well, yes, the white-haired boy nodded, took a deep breath, and activated his chakra. Buzz. The boy instantly fled 10 meters away. This move is called the instant body technique. Pong, smoke rose, and a stone took the boy's place, and he had moved to the right. This trick is called the substitution technique. Boom, the violent air flow rose up, and the flowers and plants in the yard were trembling. The young man was surrounded by green energy, his hair stood up, and his body showed a faint red color. This move is called the 8-gate armor formation. Then, a high-speed rotating blue light group quickly took shape in his hand, and the rolling energy made a subtle buzz. This is called the Rasengan. Your Majesty, the Pope has seen it before. Bibi Dong nodded subconsciously, but for the next second, deep shock flashed through her beautiful wine-red eyes. The young man took a deep breath and made 3 strange gestures. Wei Si Yin. Pong. The smoke rose again, but this time it was not a stone or a flower, but a person exactly like Su Chen appeared next to him. This move is called the clone technique. Bibi Dong looked dumbfounded at the figure whose aura was no different from that of a young man, feeling a little bad about him. After all, she had seen the previous abilities and was somewhat prepared, but this move seriously subverted her cognition. It's not that she has never seen soul skills such as disguise and clones before, but they are all soul skills of at least 3rd level and above, and the difference from the original body is also obvious. But Su Chen's clone skill, even her titled Douluo can't see any difference either. The breath and fluctuations are exactly the same. That's right, as you think, His Majesty the Pope, this is the result of my research, and it is my unique self-created soul skill. Create your own soul skills. How could this be a self-created soul skill? How could there be such an exaggerated self-created soul skill? After a while, Bibi Dong came back to her senses, took a deep breath, and then felt that her chaotic brain had cleared up for a moment, and she couldn't help but say. She had never seen self-created soul skills before, and she had also heard about the power of the Haoshan sect's chaotic cloak hammering technique. But it is a crystallization of wisdom that has been continuously passed down and perfected from generation to generation of the Haoshan sect, and several generations of people have worked together to condense it. How about you? At the age of 6, you have developed so many and terrifying self-created soul skills. There must be a limit to being a monster. If Su Chen's net worth wasn't so innocent that nothing could be traced, Bibi Dong would have suspected that he was some old monster that had gotten into the young man's body. His Majesty the Pope, have you ever understood your body and martial soul? The young man walked up to her with his hands behind his back, looking directly at her with his dark eyes. Bibi Dong nodded subconsciously, and then shook his head subconsciously. There are more than 130 trillion cells in the human body that provide energy. The 8 extraordinary meridians are responsible for absorbing and transforming soul power. It is stored in the dantian and handed over to the martial soul for absorption and soul ring movement. Then here's the problem. Master, does he know the shortest route of soul power? Does he know which operation method can absorb soul power more efficiently? Does he know what use soul power has besides releasing soul skills? Su Chen's burst of confidence and enthusiasm made her feel inexplicably shocked and awed. At this moment, she seemed to see an extremely majestic figure on that small body. Theory is very important, but without practice, everything is just a castle in the air. These are the results of my preliminary research. So, does the master have such results? Bibi Dong was speechless. She sat down on the chair feebly, intending to defend the master a few words, but she couldn't say anything. Bibi Dong somewhat understood why the little guy looked down on the master. It was true that what the boy showed was too amazing. With such profound research and understanding, it is obvious that Su Chen has formed his own style and has been putting it into practice for a long time. Among the investigation data, it was indeed revealed that this child had liked to play with some weird things since he was a child. Bibi Dong initially thought it was children playing, but he didn't expect. Shaking her head, Bibi Dong was about to say something, but her expression suddenly froze. Etc. If these are all teenagers' research, doesn't it mean that those abilities can be copied? If you can let your close followers learn the techniques of instant body, clone technique, substitute technique, Rasengan, and the 8-door armor formation. The Pope's breathing suddenly became rapid, and his beautiful burgundy eyes stared at Su Chen closely, as if looking at a rare treasure. It seems he took the bait. The young man smiled secretly in his heart, but looking at Bibi Dong's increasingly bright eyes, he couldn't help but laugh. Hey, you're not exaggerating, are you? Bibi Dong felt extremely happy. Whenever she felt that Su Chen had made her happy enough, the boy would always give her bigger surprises in unexpected places. Little guy, you are truly a gift from God, the Pope murmured, a blush appearing on his pretty face. Then without any explanation, he took the former into his arms and held him tightly to his chest. When Su Chen reacted, the elegant body fragrance penetrated into his nose, and his face was tightly wrapped by some full and elastic softness. He was stunned. Su Chen's mind went blank when he was treated like this for the first time in his 2 lives. It took him nearly 3 seconds to react, and he tried his best to break free, and escaped 20 meters away with 2 consecutive teleportation techniques. What are you doing? Listening to the young man's somewhat angry voice, a narrow smile appeared on Bibi Dong's pretty face, and she tapped her red lips with her jade finger. Are you angry? Then I'll apologize to you, okay? After reacting from the excitement, His Majesty the Pope also felt that something was a little inappropriate, but the little guy's reaction was so interesting that she couldn't help but make fun of him again. It's not like he did this on purpose, he was just so excited that he couldn't control himself for a while. Forget it, Su Chen said dully. What could he say? He could still be angry with this person and not cooperate with her. How come this woman has no sense of boundaries? Okay, don't be angry. I promise you that all the best materials will be used in your laboratory, okay? Bibi Dong chuckled lightly and sat down dignifiedly. Then her smile faded and her eyes were full of seriousness. So little guy, tell me, can your magical abilities be reproduced? At this moment, the Pope was a little nervous. Fortunately, the young man did not disappoint her as always. Of course you can, but my research is still very superficial right now, so I won't have much results in the short term. The young man thought for a moment and gave a definite answer. In fact, naturally it is not possible. All ninja techniques in the ninja world rely on chakra to operate, and no one else can use it except himself. Su Chen had his cheap father experiment on this very early. But if it doesn't work now, it doesn't mean it won't work in the future. As Douluo continent's unique chakra spirit, maybe it can have the same effect as the fruit of the sacred tree. In short, it does not affect Su Chen's use of it to draw a bigger pie in exchange for better resources and experimental environment. Of course, there is no need to mention the favorability level, really. There's no rush. You're still young now. The first priority is to cultivate your soul power. We can talk about this kind of thing later. An intoxicating smile appeared on Bibi Dong's pretty face. She was in a happy mood and looked like a lazy cat. She was lying on the table extremely relaxed, with her hot figure clearly visible. In other words, she had no intention of setting up a defense for the young man in front of her. Anyway, Su Chen saw a lot of things that he shouldn't have seen. But, little guy, I know you must be very proud now, and you have every right to be proud. The Pope tilted his head and looked at him seriously with his beautiful burgundy eyes. But remember, it is a taboo in the martial arts world to underestimate others. Yu Xiaoging's research is indeed not as good as yours, but you can't underestimate him. No matter what, he is a long-established senior. Bibi Dong said this not to gain face for Yu Xiaoging, but purely as an educational version to instill some principles on guarding against arrogance and impetuosity to Su Chen. Geniuses are easy to break, and Su Chen is a genius among geniuses. She doesn't want anything to happen to this child because of his pride. With all due respect, Your Majesty the Pope, I have also read Yu Xiaoging's works. I can only say that only one genius in a million can be educated by his theory. This theory is inherently deformed. Su Chen shrugged. With such a genius, how big of a difference can there be if he has his theory or not? It is too difficult for someone who loves research like him to respect someone like the master. He felt something was wrong about the 10 core competencies of Wuhun when he first looked at them. Later, when he had the ability, he realized that this was a purely empty hypothesis. The first is the inheritance of martial arts. It is said that it is inherited from the blood of the parents, but at what level, genes or what? If the bloodline is inherited, how should the mutation be explained? None of the actual problems were solved, it was just a conclusion that the answer can be obtained by observing the rules. There is also an innate martial soul that is directly proportional to the soul power. This is also nonsense. Among other things, Oscar's martial soul is just an ordinary sausage, but he is born with full soul power. It can't be that his sausage is also Haoshan sausage, blue silver sausage, right? And what he thought was the most outrageous was that there was no useless martial soul, only useless soul masters. Why, the clear sky hammer and the hoe are also on the same level. This is not even a theory, this is pure poisonous chicken soup. As for other theories, they are quite normal, but they are also less important things. Just relying on these specious things, Yu Xiaogang actually became a master. It was really difficult for Su Chen to understand. There's no need to say that, because I can be considered a beneficiary of this theory. Bibi Dong was about to defend the master a few words, but suddenly she was stunned. The little guy seems to be right. He is a twin martial soul with innate soul power. Even if he just practices step by step, the time to become a titled Douluo will not be much later than now. Now that I think about it, even if I abandon all those theories, it seems that there is not much impact. Thinking of this, His Holiness the Pope closed his eyes in some pain. I used to think that this was all his credit, and I spared no effort to help him and support him unconditionally, but the filter in my memory suddenly broke, and Yu Xiaogang's tall figure in Bibi Dong's heart instantly became ordinary. When she thought about his recent passionate love with her cousin, Bibi Dong actually felt a little disgusted with him for the first time. It seems that the little guy's evaluation is really right. Ignorance, incompetence, pitiful, and pathetic. How did I fall in love with such a person in the past, and I was obsessed with him? His Holiness the Pope was confused for a moment. Seeing that Bibi Dong fell into some kind of thinking, Su Chen quietly left. His goal has been achieved. Making this Pope no longer so love-brained is also part of the plan. Today, facing Bibi Dong's plan, a large part has been completed, and the rest will take time to slowly brew. Facing the morning sun and feeling the faint warmth, the boy was in a good mood. The plan process was safe and sound, and finally achieved his goal. The signs of self-created soul skills have been told, so that he can use this excuse for future ninjutsu. The reason why he showed the clone technique was that he considered that he would inevitably use the shadow clone technique in the future, so he took a precautionary shot in advance. As for the buggy skills such as transformation, it is easy to cause some unnecessary troubles if they are shown, so it is better to keep them in hand as a trump card. In addition to these, there is a piece of 10,000-year soul bone, the discovery of natural energy, a well-equipped and best laboratory, and Bibi Dong's trust. This is what he gained last night. Of course, it would be better if that woman could be less boundless. Thinking of this, Su Chen had a headache. Forget it, never mind, it's time to go back and catch up on sleep. The boy shook his head, threw these messy thoughts out of his mind, and yawned. He was sleepy yesterday. If it weren't for the excitement last night, he would have fallen asleep long ago. Now that he was relaxed, fatigue came over him. Just as he was considering whether to find a place nearby to rest for a while, a faint and familiar fragrance filled his nose. This woman is chasing me. Su Chen was shocked and raised his head quickly, only to find a golden figure walking towards him. It's not Bibi Dong, it's Qian Runshui. The visitor is a young girl. She is tall, with skin as white as snow, wearing a light white dress, and her long golden hair is like silk, shining brightly in the morning light. Her delicate face is somewhat similar to Bibi Dong, but she lacks some charm and temptation, but has more youthfulness and purity that are unique to young girls. Su Chen can recognize her. In addition to the familiar fragrance, there are also eyes that are almost the same as Bibi Dong. Qian Runshui's golden eyes are full of indifference. It is as if she doesn't care about anything, even more than His Holiness the Pope. And her personality is the same. If Bibi Dong was pure and innocent before she turned evil, and became cruel after she turned evil, then Qian Runshui is born with an indifferent personality. After all, this is a ruthless person who sneaked into the Tiando Palace at the age of 9 to replace the eldest Prince Shui Qinghe, and poisoned the second Prince of Tiando at the age of 14. His talent is unprecedented and unparalleled. His innate full soul power is level 20, and he absorbed 100,000-year soul bone at the age of 9. Just talking about this, even Su Chen couldn't help but admire him. But such a person who has been decisive, calm and rational since childhood, and has extraordinary talent, still began to reduce his intelligence and love brain after meeting the Tang God King. There is nothing fishy about this. Su Chen doesn't believe it. Qian Runshui is like this, and so is Bibi Dong. The defeat was inexplicable. It is hard to say whether the inheritance of the angel god and the Rakshasa god is a blessing or a premeditated shackle. Anyway, Su Chen thinks that it is not so difficult for these two to become gods by practicing on their own. However, it is not rational to contact the plan of the god realm at this stage, and it is still necessary to be cautious. Su Chen suppressed his thoughts. His eyes stayed on the girl's delicate face for a moment, and then he stepped aside to make way. The fragrant wind rolled, and the two passed by in the boy's thoughts. Just when they were completely separated, Su Chen seemed to feel that the golden eyes were suddenly looking at him. Fortunately, after a moment, the feeling of being watched disappeared. Shaking his head, Su Chen suddenly became curious. At this time, Qian Runshui should be in the Tiando Palace. She came back early, so she should report to Bibi Dong, right? He thought so. If he has time, he should ask Bibi Dong indirectly. After all, he also has corresponding plans for the Tiando Empire. If Qian Runshui's position in Tiando is stable, she will definitely play a very key role. In his opinion, stealing the country by killing the royal family is stupid and a waste of time. No wonder it failed in the end. With this status and time, monopoly, control of resources, no matter which one, can control the country without bloodshed and quietly. 20 years is enough to replace all the political hubs with their own people, control the economic lifeline and military power, and guide public opinion in secret. At that time, without their help, the royal family will naturally perish. Of course, in the final analysis, strength is the most important. As long as there is strength, everything will be easy. Forget it, let's have a good rest today. When we have a laboratory, we can naturally come up with some ninjutsu that can be used at this stage. The young man stretched and thought. There is a ninjutsu that he has been coveting for a long time. After all, it is Su Chen's famous ninjutsu. In the Pope's private garden. Bibi Dong sat quietly in the garden, with her jade arms supporting her chin, her beautiful eyes staring at the substitute flower of Su Chen in the vase, and her mind was full of thoughts. After the filter was broken and collapsed, many things that I couldn't understand before were instantly figured out. For example, why Yu Shaogang was able to become famous in the martial arts world. The biggest reason was not because of himself. The biggest beneficiary of the 10 theories, the saint of the spirit hall. Is there anything more sensational than this? For example, Yu Shaogang seamlessly connected to the next one, but I still think he loves me. When I was most helpless, he was probably having fun with his cousin, right? How ridiculous. His Holiness the Pope's eyelashes trembled, and a glittering flash passed. Fortunately, there is the little guy, otherwise, how long will I be sad for that ignorant, incompetent, pitiful and pathetic person? When Bibi Dong thought of the helpless expression of the silver-haired boy who was very close to her, she felt much better. Well, it seems that I have to let the little guy check my body. This is not an opportunity to tease him, but His Holiness the Pope thought that most of his soul rings were absorbed by listening to Yu Shaogang's so-called theory. Even though I felt that there were some problems at the time, I subconsciously ignored them because of my love for Yu Shaogang. Now it seems that those soul rings may not be suitable for me. If there are any problems, it is better to solve them in advance. Of course, it would be even better if we could see the little guy in such an awkward state. Thinking of this, His Holiness raised the corners of his lips in a rather pleasant way. Your Holiness, you. Just as Bibi Dong was imagining how to tease Su Chen, an unbelievable voice suddenly came from the door. Bibi Dong raised her head in a panic, and then she saw a blonde girl standing at the door of the garden without knowing when, looking at her with astonishment on her pretty face. Qian Runshui felt that her worldview was collapsing at this moment. Since she was born, she had never seen a smile on the face of this woman who was called her mother but was actually her enemy. There was only disgust, hatred, and endless gloom and despair. Qian Runshui had tried to do a lot for this, but she didn't understand it until her father's death. The two of them could never be like a normal mother-daughter relationship. The superiors and subordinates who used each other were already the limit. And now, what did she see? Bibi Dong, the Pope of the Spirit Hall, actually showed such a gentle and beautiful smile at this moment. It was a beautiful scene that she had never seen before. Her dead father had never seen before, and her grandfather had never seen before. The ultimate charm was exuded without reservation, and the beauty was beyond description. Even though Qian Runshui was indifferent by nature, she couldn't help blushing at this moment, and her heart was pounding. You know you can't leave Tiando City casually now, right? But then, the cold and unparalleled voice brought the girl back to reality. Looking again, Bibi Dong had already restored her indifferent expression. It seemed that everything that had just appeared was a beautiful illusion of the girl. Qian Runshui just felt a little breathless. But after a moment, she adjusted her state and restored the indifferent expression that was exactly the same as the person in the distance. The second prince of Tiando Empire will disappear within 3 years. Who will be the next target? Qian Runshui said without any emotion. In a casual way, one of the most distinguished figures in a country was determined to die. If you are here just because of this kind of thing, then I am very disappointed in you. The wine-red eyes looked coldly at the blonde girl in front of her. Third prince, fourth prince, whoever may threaten you to sit in that position, don't let them go. In addition, poisoning can only be used once at most. Well, I know. Okay, you can go. Remember, don't let the Tiando royal family find out anything, otherwise it will affect the plan. You know the consequences in your heart. His Holiness waved his hand and stopped looking at her, instead focusing on the ordinary flower. A gentle smile appeared at the corner of his mouth again. Qian Runshui wanted to turn around and leave, but when she saw this scene, she stopped abruptly. The girl's forced calm heart suddenly began to waver, and then a huge wave surged. There was surprise, disbelief, and a hint of jealousy that she herself did not notice. Somehow, her mind suddenly recalled the silver-haired boy she had just met. The latter's aura was so strong, and his attitude was so cold when he saw her, which was not like a child at all, so she took another look at him. Now thinking about it, it seems that he walked out from here. Could it be that Bibi Dong's current strange state is related to him? The person who stayed with His Holiness the Pope last night. Are you talking about Su Chen? Yu Guan looked at the blonde girl in front of him in confusion, and said uncertainly. Because Hu Liena and others still needed special arrangements, Gui Mei went out to find a suitable area, and he stayed in Wuhun City. Bibi Dong didn't say what they were doing, but Yu Guan didn't understand. It was clearly to let him protect Su Chen alone. Jealousy made Zhu Douluo unrecognizable. So, when the granddaughter of the great priest, the most talented person in the history of Wuhun Hall, appeared in front of him and asked this question, he reacted immediately. This kid is now deeply loved by His Holiness the Pope. I haven't even entered that garden. Zhu Douluo said sourly. So, his name is Su Chen. Qian Runshui's mind flashed with the boy's striking silver hair and black eyes. She nodded and asked, is he a newcomer who has just joined the spirit hall? Well, his spirit was awakened a few days ago, and he officially became a spirit master a few days ago. Zhu Douluo thought for a while and said, although I am very unhappy, this boy is indeed very talented. Not only is he born with full spirit power, but his spirit is also a rare new spirit. Of course, compared with your innate full spirit power of level 20 and the angel spirit, it is still a lot worse, but... In fact, Yu Guan felt that Su Chen's spirit might even be better than the angel spirit. After all, he had seen the angel spirit, and even the former pope had not made him feel the pressure of encountering natural enemies and superiors, but Su Chen's spirit made him feel that way. But if he said this, it would be a bit too shocking to the world. Just what? Qian Runshui frowned slightly. She felt that this was possible, and it was the key to Bibi Dong's different attitude towards the boy. Ah, his first soul ring is 1,000 years, about 3,000 years. Before Zhu Douluo finished speaking, the blonde girl stood up suddenly, staring at him with golden eyes, and said in a hurried tone, this is impossible. Even if she was a top-level martial soul, with an innate soul power of level 20, her first soul ring only reached the absolute limit of 400 years, and even the second soul ring was only 900 years. And that was already Qian Runshui's limit. No one understood that feeling better than her. Just 100 years more years, the feeling of being surrounded and eroded by the consciousness of the soul beast's death, the slightest carelessness would cause the soul power to be disordered and exploded and die. The first ring is 1,000 years, let alone 3,000 years, even 1,001 years is impossible. Hey, don't disbelieve it, many elders have seen it. Zhu Douluo looked at the girl's expression and felt extremely comfortable. How about it, did you experience it? The feeling of subverting the worldview. By the way, he still has 4 soul skills. Yu Guan happily delivered a critical hit. Qian Runshui didn't say anything, just walked out without saying a word. Looking at the girl's somewhat lonely back, Yu Guan shrugged. He didn't even say that Su Chen had killed a level 40 iron-horned rhino soul sect head-on. If you heard this, your heart would be broken. The psychological quality of children nowadays is really not good. I completely forgot how he reacted when he first saw all this. 1000-year soul ring, 4 soul skills. She has always been a proud person. Of course, she also has the capital to be proud. The innate soul power is level 20, and the soul rings are the best ratio. But now, someone has completely broken her pride. No wonder that woman has such an expression, no wonder that woman looks at you with new eyes. In her mind, the silver-haired and black-eyed boy became clearer and clearer, and Qian Runshui bit her lips tightly until she bled. An emotion called jealousy quietly took root and grew wildly from the girl's suppressed heart. I want to see how powerful the first ring of 1000 years is. Su Chen didn't know that he had been targeted by the future angel god. Otherwise, he would definitely feel that this was an unprovoked disaster. After a few days of peace and quiet, Su Chen was also happy to be idle, and took the opportunity to study his martial soul. Although he can use chakra at present, those 5 elements escape techniques are still unable to be used as if they lack some medium, but according to his guess, there is a high probability that a soul ring is still needed. Fortunately, Su Chen's soul power is not slow, and the soul ring of the Linwu silkworm directly raised him to level 15. With the improved soul power training method, he can hunt for the second soul ring in at most 1 month. At that time, he will understand what the reason is. Just when Su Chen was immersed in research, a message spread across the continent. The Wuhun Hall is about to hold a ceremony for the succession of the new pope. As the largest soul master organization on the continent and the dream place of countless soul masters, every move of the Spirit Hall has attracted a lot of attention. Although the news that the former pope was seriously injured and died by the genius of the Haoshan sect was blocked, it could not be concealed from the investigation of those who were interested. For a time, all the forces, big and small, were ready to move. At this time when the storm was about to come, the Spirit Hall made a big fanfare and invited many forces to watch the ceremony on the spot. This move undoubtedly touched everyone's heartstrings. But no one acted rashly. Everyone just watched and watched the reactions of the other 7 major forces, or the 3 most powerful forces in this continent. In a mysterious place, among the beautiful mountains, in the clouds and mist, precious lights shine and cranes circle. Suddenly, a breeze blows away the clouds and mist, and the exquisite and beautiful buildings are lined up in an orderly manner. This is the first auxiliary sect on the continent and one of the top 3 sects. The 7 treasure glazed sect. In a high pavilion like a moon surrounded by stars in the building complex, a quarrel is taking place. Fengji, I don't recommend you to wade into this muddy water. In the elegant room, the fragrance is curling and the sound of stringed instruments is still unable to cover up the somewhat tense atmosphere. The old man who spoke was wearing a spotless snow-white robe, his hair and beard were all white, and his long silver hair was neatly combed behind his back. He had a simple appearance and a face as delicate as a baby. At this moment, he was looking at the young man in front of him with a serious face. The Spirit Hall is far from being as simple as you think. The young man had a handsome face, a straight nose and a square mouth. He had a gentle and elegant appearance. He wore a spotless white robe. Hearing the old man's serious words, he could only smile bitterly. Uncle Jian, we can't choose this matter. The Spirit Hall is not here to invite us, but to inform us. If I guess correctly, all forces and colleges, as long as they have a name, should have received this invitation. Ning Fengji sighed faintly, with an indissoluble hesitation between his brows. The Spirit Hall is forcing us to take sides. It seems that the rumors this time are probably true. Tang Hao killed Qinzunji, and the Spirit Hall is not going to let it go. Clear Sky Hammer, it's really a terrible power. It can even kill the angel spirit. Sword Douluo Chenxin frowned and felt the thorniness of this matter. Going or not going is not a good thing for the 7 treasures glazed sect. It is not a good thing to be at odds with the Haoshan sect, but standing on the opposite side of the Spirit Hall will also bring endless troubles to Qibao Luli. What do you think? Do you want to go? Chen Xin asked. He couldn't think of an answer to this question, so he could only throw it to the sect master. Go, of course I will go. Ning Fengji thought for a moment, adjusted his glasses, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. I believe other people think so too. After all, they have invited us so warmly, we can't not go, right? I just hope that the spirit hall will not make things worse. Chapter 31. In a dark hall, there were figures and whispers. Martial Soul Hall, the person who came here is not a good person. According to me, there is no need to be afraid at all. Even the Pope was beaten to death by Tang Hao. I think Wuhun Palace is strong on the outside and strong on the inside, but that's all. You juniors, I'm afraid you have never experienced the feeling of having that terrible guy Qian Daoliu crush you on your head. Isn't there someone from the Haoshan sect? Young or old people discussed it for a long time, but no one came to a conclusion, and finally turned their attention to the figure above. He was an extremely strong old man, with muscles all over his body as solid as granite. Just sitting there, he was over 2 meters tall. His hair was as white as needles, his eyes were like lightning, and his aura was as deep as the sea. Sitting there, it gives people an extremely peaceful feeling. It seems that if the sky falls, he will hold it up. No need to talk so much, just go. A low, thunderous voice sounded, and everyone who had been arguing in the sea fell silent instantly. Here, he is the absolute authority. By the way, get that little brat Yu Shaogang back to me too. I haven't settled the matter with him yet for having separated from the Holy Maiden of Wuhun Hall without permission. This time, let him go too. The burly old man snorted coldly. I would like to see what kind of medicine is sold in the gourd of Wuhun Palace. The new Pope, you are just a young girl who is still trying to establish your authority. If Qiandao leaks out, I will give you some face. Otherwise, don't blame me, the blue electric Tyrannosaurus, for being unkind. It was already a week later when Su Chen broke away from the addiction to experiments and cultivation. Zhu Douluo brought the Pope's edict and also brought unexpected news. The Pope's succession ceremony. Is there going to be a joint competition? The morning breeze was gentle and the sun was a little dazzling. 2 figures, one tall and one short, were walking in Wuhun City, heading towards the Pope's palace. Along the way, people greeted Zhu Douluo respectfully from time to time, and cast curious glances at Su Chen. Squinting his eyes to relieve the sore feeling caused by using his Byakugan for a long time, the young man looked at Zhu Douluo with some surprise. Who came up with this idea? The original intention of the succession ceremony was to intimidate the other 2 sects of the upper 3 sects and prevent them from easily interfering with the Haoshan sect's policies. Su Chen certainly knew this inside story. After all, strictly speaking, he was also one of the initiators of the plan. But he didn't know how to deter or what the content of deterrence was. I didn't expect it to be this way. However, Su Chen thought about it and found that this method seemed pretty good, or in other words, it should be the current optimal solution. It can not only show off one's fangs, but also highlight one's own heritage. If everything goes well, the effect will be natural. No one dares to mess with a scary neighbor who is strong now and in the future. Of course, His Majesty the Pope. Zhu Douluo glanced at him, his soft face full of admiration. The wisdom of His Majesty the Pope is unparalleled. Su Chen, forget it, too lazy to refute. Shaking his head, the young man thought of something. Then what does she want from me? Zhu Douluo will definitely not come to him specifically for this kind of thing, and the competition has nothing to do with him. No matter what, this competition would not be enough for a 6-year-old child to enter. Why do you mean she's looking for you? Oh, boy, you don't know how blessed you are. Do you know that His Majesty the Pope has never valued a person so much? You. Zhu Douluo glared at him angrily and muttered with resentment, why, you kid. This man is really hopeless. Too lazy to listen to Zhu Douluo's chatter along the way, Su Chen came to the Pope's palace again after a few days. Today's Pope's palace is a little empty. Except for the stunning woman on the high seat, there are only a few elders below who are reporting something. Bibi Dong was still wearing the luxurious and elegant papal robe, with a serious look on her pretty face that was listening attentively. When she saw Su Chen coming in, her burgundy eyes showed an undetectable fluctuation. Su Chen didn't disturb him, just stayed in the corner quietly, still thinking about the previous experimental results in his mind. After the improved dual cultivation method has been further perfected, the current cultivation speed can be said to be rapid. Su Chen was wondering whether to take this out for initial research and successfully passed it on to Bibi Dong. Although there is no chakra and the effect of doubling the training is not achieved, improving the spiritual energy absorption circuit can increase the efficiency by 20 to 30%. With the mimic training environment, the overall improvement can be about 50%, which is a relatively good result. Of course, this is based on Su Chen's standards. It's just that he probably doesn't know that the method of increasing the cultivation speed by half, no matter which force it is placed in, can be regarded as a core secret that has been passed down for thousands of years. Therefore, when Su Chen took out this later, Bibi Dong's behavior completely exceeded his expectations. After an unknown amount of time, the hall finally became quiet. When Su Chen raised his head with a feeling, he saw a pair of burgundy eyes looking at him with interest. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Nothing, some research topics." Su Chen shook his head and then realized that they were the only two people left in the hall. You, when will you act like a real 6-year-old child?" On the Pope's throne, the stunning woman stretched out, and her graceful figure wrapped in the Pope's robe was fully displayed in front of Su Chen, with her perfect curves clearly visible. "This woman, do you really think of yourself as a man? Can you avoid suspicion? Also, if he really acts like a 6-year-old, he would probably be playing in the mud with Xie Yu and the others. How could he see you?" Su Chen rolled his eyes in his heart. Seeing the boy's body stiffened instinctively, Bibi Dong raised the corners of her lips with pleasure, and felt that the fatigue of the day was relieved a lot. "Sure enough, only in front of the little guy can I relax a little. Okay, let's go and see your His Holiness blinked and wanted to take the boy's hand naturally, but he was cautiously avoided. "Laboratory. Su Chen's eyes lit up and said with some surprise, "It's already built. Shouldn't it be said that it is worthy of the Spirit Hall? The largest soul master organization on the continent is indeed well deserved. If this were to be changed to Shrek or other places, unless you fully invest, it would be impossible to build it without 1 or 2 years. And in the Spirit Hall, how many days have passed? 7 days or 6 days. This efficiency is really great." A hint of success flashed across her wine-red eyes, and Bibi Dong took the boy's hand. This time, Su Chen did not dodge, or did not notice it at all. His mind was full of his own laboratory. If he was not afraid of being too abrupt, Su Chen would have wanted Bibi Dong to take him there. That would definitely be much faster. So, with the boy full of expectations, the two walked to Bibi Dong's garden. Looking at the familiar building in front of him, Su Chen was silent. He did not speak, but just looked at Bibi Dong. The meaning was self-evident. "Why, do you suspect that I lied to you?" She chuckled and pulled Su Chen in. When they reached the center of the garden, Bibi Dong suddenly stretched out her hand, and the powerful soul power burst out, outlining a strange symbol on the ground. Then, the ordinary piece of grass suddenly split neatly in the middle and moved to both sides. After a moment, a wide corridor leading downward appeared. "Let's go down and take a look. Don't worry, you won't be disappointed." The Pope gently pushed him, with a charming smile on his pretty face. "That's right, she really has no reason to hurt me." Su Chen took a deep breath, nodded, and walked down. The corridor was inlaid with night pearls on both sides, and it didn't look dark. After walking down the steps for about 5 minutes, a door appeared in front of the boy. Gently pushing the door open, when the scene inside came into the boy's eyes, even though Su Chen was prepared, he couldn't help but take a breath. Big, very big. An area as big as a football field was evenly divided into 3 parts, separated by thick walls. The ceiling was inlaid with countless luminous pearls, making the dark underground as bright as day. Su Chen opened his eyes and looked at it. In the first area, various test benches, utensils, petri dishes, and nutrient solutions were arranged in an orderly manner. They were basically restored to at least 90% according to his requirements, and the walls of this area were all inlaid with some kind of solid alloy, complete ventilation facilities, and a soft sofa far away for temporary rest. The second area looks relatively empty, with several types of dummies and metal blocks placed inside. The entire area is made of black rock, which is enough to withstand most impacts. As for the third area, the young man looked a little weird. The steaming hot springs, the big beds full of flower petals, the flower beds, the rockeries, and the gurgling water make you feel relaxed and happy just by looking at them. The outer layers of these three areas are wrapped in hard alloy, plus a layer of familiar soul power barrier. It's really an exaggeration. Su Chen took a deep breath and murmured. Experimental area, training area, and a rest area that can accommodate 4 people. Big deal. It was simply a generous act beyond his imagination. It took 7 days to create such a perfect underground space. Not to mention anything else, the price of this layer of alloy, which nearly covers the entire underground, is definitely more than 4 million gold soul coins. Not to mention that most of the appliances he requested were made of glazed spar, which is transparent, has no color difference, and has excellent energy conducting effects, so the price is not cheap. There are also those nutrient solutions. Although herbs may not be much compared to the previous 2, what he requires is long-term supply. After the entire underground space is built, it is more than enough to buy 1 10,000-year soul bone. Even if it is not particularly rare, you can buy 2 or 3. Inhumane, simply inhumane. Su Chen knew that the Pope was optimistic about him and might invest more, but he didn't expect that he would be able to put out so much. Worthy of being the Hall of Spirits, worthy of being the Pope. A sweet chuckle followed the fragrant wind and came to the back of the young man, and his jade hand slowly touched the young man's shoulder. Are you satisfied? The Pope's head gently came to Su Chen's ear and blew out a breath of sweet, moist and hot breath, blowing on his cheek. Su Chen subconsciously wanted to turn away, but finally held back. After spending so much, it would be too much to touch him twice and not let him get away with it. Bibi Dong's burgundy beautiful eyes showed the light of successful plot, and she directly pinched Su Chen's face, and the corners of her lips curved in pleasure. This woman, forget it. Forcibly ignoring the smooth and tender touch on his face, Su Chen looked at the base and nodded slightly excitedly. Satisfied, very satisfied, he was so satisfied. You know, even when he was in the ninja world, he never had such a good experimental environment. Thinking about Su Chen makes me feel sad. At that time, in order to avoid the detection of the 3rd generation in Danzo, he and Orochimaru could only open laboratories everywhere, either in caves or abandoned root bases. It's hard to describe the environment in these places. And when he became the invincible ninja world, he was brought here by the dog system before he could build a big laboratory to realize his dream. Grandma, sooner or later the system will stuff this dog into the world and use it as toilet paper. Su Chen gritted his teeth in his heart. As long as you like it, little one, this place will belong to you from now on. Bibi Dong covered her mouth and smiled, charmingly, but if you want to bring someone in, you still need to tell me. Well, of course, after all. Su Chen nodded, but suddenly realized that this seemed to be underneath Bibi Dong's private garden. No, you. The young man was a little dumbfounded. What is this, living with Bibi Dong? Why, I am doing this to satisfy your request. You said it must be safe. Is there any safer place in Wuhan City than mine? The Pope smiled brightly under his crown, brushed his red lips with his jade finger, touched it gently, blinked his eyes, and looked at him confidently. Su Chen. He was speechless. There's nothing wrong with it. Indeed, Tang Hao almost smashed the Pope's palace in the future without affecting it here. In a sense, this is indeed the safest place. Never mind. The young man shook his head. Compared to this underground base, this is just a trivial matter. Besides, Bibi Dong is not the 3rd generation, so he is not allowed to conduct human experiments. As long as he can produce results, he might be proactive in sending materials. My Majesty the Pope, please give me more love. It just so happens that I have some insights into the cultivation method. Now that I have a laboratory, I will be able to produce the results in a few days. Su Chen cupped his hands and said seriously. Originally, he wanted to keep it in his hands for a while, but after seeing this base, the young man changed his mind. After calming down, he realized something. Even if Bibi Dong were the Pope, given her current situation, it would not be easy for her to rashly transfer such a large sum of money to herself. Otherwise, she might become the subject of criticism. If it is more serious and Bibi Dong's behavior is restricted, he, as a high-profile subordinate, will also be implicated. Su Chen is still very confident in his own cultivation. It won't be a problem if he is taken seriously. It should be no problem to stop some people's mouths. Bibi Dong was stunned for a moment, her pretty face a little moved. This kid is a little too smart. Did he even think of this? A warm feeling spread in her heart from under the Pope's crown, making her unable to help but feel a little moved. Don't worry, it'll be okay, just take your time. Bibi Dong took a breath and looked at the young man's beautiful burgundy eyes, full of bright tenderness. Su Chen's words made her very happy. Thinking about the difficulties and questions, His Majesty the Pope doesn't feel so uncomfortable anymore. However, right now, she could never imagine what kind of surprise the boy would give her. Then I won't disturb you. Bibi Dong tapped the young man's forehead and chuckled. By the way, if you want to enter here, you just need to stand in that position and release your soul power. Only the soul power of the two of us can open this place. Also, this is for you, she said and handed Su Chen a metal token. Take this, and no one will stop you in the future. Well, you can take it out if you encounter danger outside. With that said, the Pope waved his hand and walked up the steps. Only when the graceful figure disappeared from the young man's sight did he focus on the token in his hand. Just looking at it, Su Chen's expression changed. The metal token was completely black, with a silver edge outlined on it, and a few rubies inlaid on the top. Most importantly, it was engraved with several reliefs that were very familiar to Su Chen. Sword, hammer, crown, an incomplete human form, a dragon and a chrysanthemum. Is this a papal decree? The young man took a deep breath and looked at this token, which could be said to be the highest level of Wuhun Palace, with a somewhat complicated expression. What Bibi Dong said was a bit conservative. With this sign, it is not an exaggeration to say that you can walk sideways in Tiando. Like the Pope coming in person. This is what the papal decree means. This is really true. The young man reluctantly put away the heavy token. This woman is very annoying when she has no sense of boundaries. Her temperament is also indifferent and cruel, and she is extremely profound. In order to achieve her own goals, she can give up everything she can. But if you really care about someone, your dedication to them will reach a pathologically exaggerated level. Etc. Su Chen took a breath. Could this be the legendary Yandere? In the bright underground base, the silver-haired boy thought of something and shook his head. What does a 6-year-old kid like me have to do with Yandere? Kicked all the messy thoughts out of his mind, Su Chen wiped his hands, and pushed open the door of the experimental area impatiently. Measuring cup, alcohol lamp, culture vessel. Looking at the green liquid that occasionally bubbled, the boy felt a familiar and strange feeling coming. It's been a long time. The boy stroked the equipment and finally stopped in front of the test bench. Pulling the lighting, Su Chen took out two things from the soul guide. The body slices of the Linwu silkworm, and the 10,000-year soul bone containing natural energy. The former is said to have a great tonic effect. Su Chen wants to try to make it into a medicine to improve the utilization rate and absorption efficiency. Not to mention the latter, natural energy is a priority and must be studied. Su Chen rubbed his hands, chakra surged, and his eyes instantly turned jade-like white. Rolling eyes, perspective, let me see what secrets you are hiding. In an unknown valley, the roars of wild beasts and low-level soul beasts continued to come, and at the same time, the cries of young boys and girls could be heard faintly. What a boring job, these little brats are really. In the center of the valley, on the tallest tree, Ghost Douluo sat cross-legged on a tree branch board, his mental power spread out, taking in every corner of the valley. At this moment, except for Su Chen, all the awakened children above level 5 were here. Some were bitten by wild beasts, struggling and crying desperately, some formed teams, struggling to hunt and survive, and some trembled in the corners, not daring to make any moves. Such scenes were staged in every corner of the valley. Faced with such a miserable scene, Ghost Douluo was unmoved. Unless someone's life was hanging by a thread, he would release some soul power to save him, and then throw him out of the valley directly, and naturally there would be people who prepared in advance to take him away. These are all failed products. They will be trained and taught intensively, and when they grow up a little, they will be sent to some positions that are not dangerous but have no future. Those who can hunt soul beasts in this valley with their own hands, or even those who are deliberately put in, are the key training targets of the Spirit Hall. Well, although not as evil as Su Chen, he is also a rare genius. Ghost Douluo stared at one direction with interest. There, Xie Yu, Yan, Juliana, and a little girl named Zhongping were struggling to resist the endless tide of beasts. Several people were almost soaked in blood, their faces were pale, and they were obviously on the verge of collapse. No matter how strong the genius is, he is only a 6-year-old child. The stench of killing and blood all hit their shaky minds. Even Xie Yu, who is the strongest, is almost fainting at this moment. What surprised Ghost Douluo was that Juliana's reaction was the best among the few people. At this moment, she can still keep a relatively clear mind and keep giving orders. This little girl is not bad. He nodded with satisfaction, and then sighed. It's all because of Su Chen, this monster, who forced their threshold to rise with incredible performances again and again, so that now they are a little unmoved when seeing geniuses of this level. Otherwise, this kind of thing would come with him and old Chrysanthemum in previous years. This year, it was only him. Come on, little girls and little brats, there is still a long time. Only when you walk out of here can you be called the elites of the future. Pain, suffocation, and the pungent smell of blood almost drowned Juliana's nerves. The beautiful pink hair had long been stained red by blood, and the delicate little face was also covered with minced meat and blood. She couldn't even tell whether it was her own or the beast's that kept rushing over. Almost mechanically waving the weapon in her hand, releasing soul power, listening to the roars and screams coming from her ears, a pair of dark and bright eyes emerged in Juliana's mind. A day ago, when Ghost Douluo brought them to this valley, she had asked about the whereabouts of the boy. But the answer she got silenced everyone, including her. Su Chen, what is that kid doing here? Is he here to kill people? I'm telling you, he can kill people from one end of the valley to the other without a dry eye. He has already skipped this step. At that time, they naively thought that the beasts here were weak. Until the first student almost died in front of them. Until they were surrounded by beasts and forced into a desperate situation. Until they tried their best and only killed a 10-year soul beast. They just knew what Ghost Douluo meant by that sentence. The girl didn't have any special feelings for Su Chen, but she was curious about why the boy was so powerful, why he was so calm, and why he could make her feel so warm. She had many questions and wanted to catch up with him to ask. But now, there was suddenly a huge gap between them. No, strong soul power fluctuations burst out from the girl. Pink light spread, and the shadow of the demon fox loomed on Juliana. The surrounding beasts seemed to have seen the goddess in their hearts. They stopped their movements and their eyes turned pink. Hoo-hoo. The girl panted heavily. Her face was as white as gold paper, but she showed a happy smile. Now, the gap should not be that big, right? She thought so, her beautiful eyes closed, and she lost consciousness. Zhongping behind her hurriedly ran over to hug her. This is Nana's soul power, let's go. Xie Yu scanned the surroundings, and his pale face felt that his muscles were shaking and he had lost his strength, but if he didn't leave now, he would die when these beasts recovered. Yan was still panting in shock, nodded hurriedly, and followed Xie Yu. She actually broke through. This little girl, what a strong charm talent. Ghost Douluo narrowed his eyes, a little surprised. In fact, their performance was enough to get out of this valley, but Ghost Douluo wanted to see what these little brats could do. Well, maybe His Holiness the Pope will accept her as a disciple, of course, if Su Chen doesn't interfere. But, speaking of this, I don't know what's going on in Wuhun City. Has this kid made any big noise again? I really want to go back and take a look. A faint muttering came from the big tree in the center of the valley. Su Chen naturally didn't know that Juliana had exploded because of him, and he didn't know that Ghost Douluo was also thinking about him. At this moment, he was standing in front of the Pope. Level 20. So fast. Bibi Dong opened her red lips slightly, and looked at the boy with her beautiful eyes full of surprise. It's only been a few days. He has already broken through level 20. By this calculation, the little guy is almost the same as the evil seed with full innate soul power back then. Both of them had level 20 soul power when they were 6 years old, but the little guy was different from that evil seed. He increased by 5 levels in less than half a month. This speed is simply terrifying. Well, I was also surprised. Su Chen nodded helplessly. He expected the breakthrough time to be not so fast, it should be 1 month later, but the domineering of natural energy was beyond his imagination. Originally, he was just trying to absorb it, but after the natural energy touched the chakra, it was like touching a newlywed wife who had been away for a long time. It rushed into the boy's body with a rude and rough attitude, and began to wander in the meridians with the chakra without saying anything. This scared Su Chen enough. You know, there are very strict requirements for the ratio of chakra and natural energy in the body. If you are not careful, you will assimilate with nature. Fortunately, the most terrible situation he expected did not happen. I don't know if it's because of too little natural energy or some other reason, Su Chen did not turn into a stone statue, but his soul power soared by 5 levels. And that soul bone, as if it had lost its core, went from being shiny to dull, and even some cracks could be seen. Su Chen could feel that it was slowly recovering, but this time was very long, so long that it was almost negligible. In short, this is an experiment that can neither be called a success nor a failure. Little guy, you really give me new surprises every day. After a long time, the Pope finally breathed a sigh of relief, and the reflection of the silver-haired boy was full in her wine-red eyes. She patted Su Chen's shoulder gently, then let Elder Ju go with you to the Stardow Great Forest. It must be said that this sudden 5-level winning streak brought some unnecessary trouble to Su Chen. If other soul masters heard this, they would definitely want to die with him. Versailles wouldn't be like this, right? But for Su Chen, not only was the plan interrupted, the research on soul bones was also terminated. He wanted to study it unless he found the second 10,000-year-old soul bone. That piece of soul bone can still be absorbed, but Su Chen can feel that the energy and skill power contained in it are very weak. Not only can it not improve soul power and physical fitness, but it may also have to use its own soul power to use it normally. 9/10 of his skills have been castrated. In addition, Douluo and Ghost Douluo never stopped looking at them like they were looking at monsters along the way. Approaching the big forest, Su Chen finally couldn't stand the looks in their eyes and couldn't help but said, I don't want to break through this kind of thing in a short time, okay? Can you please stop looking at me like that? Ghost Douluo, Douluo, do you know how much my research progress will be delayed if I break through these 5 levels? No, you don't know. You only care about yourselves. Ghost Douluo, Douluo, if possible, I would trade level 5 to get back the lost time. The young man sighed helplessly. This is really not pretentious, the level can be improved no matter what, but the research on natural energy is not that easy. No, I can't bear it anymore, I'm so. Douluo's eyes were red, and he rolled up his sleeves, ready to give some childhood education to this fool who started poking at the heart at a young age. Here, do people say it? Is this something a person can say? Please translate for me, what does it mean to be willing to trade level 5 to get back the lost time? Calm down, old chrysanthemum, if you bully him now, he will bully you in the same way in 10 years. Maybe we will have to make ends meet under someone else's hands in the future. Ghost Douluo quickly grabbed his good brother and gave him serious advice. This kid is a bit too evil. In terms of overall talent, he has already surpassed the granddaughter of the great priest. In addition, judging from His Majesty's current love for him, if he grows up safely, this holy son of Wuhun Palace is almost 100% destined. Douluo suddenly became depressed. What the good brother said makes sense. Although he is not angry in his heart, this kid is indeed. Alas. The young man noticed his resentful eyes and raised his eyebrows. Well, what's wrong? Has Elder Ju finally realized my difficulty? Douluo, old ghost, don't stop me, I will definitely kill this brat today. Calm down, old chrysanthemum, calm down. Ah. Amidst the noise, the three finally arrived at their destination. Star Forest, the ancient trees that block out the sky and the sun, the endless green sea, the deep abyss, and the sky are filled with fluorescent lights. No matter how many times he sees it, this forest will always give Su Chen a little shock. Little Su Chen, do you have any thoughts about your second soul ring? The three of them stopped outside, and Ghost Douluo asked. Regarding Su Chen's soul ring, Bibi Dong specifically warned not to interfere too much and just listen to Su Chen's own decision. The two of them didn't have any objections. After all, even they were confused about Su Chen's martial spirit called chakra. Well, if you can, Please help me find a water-attributed soul beast, about 4,000 to 6,000 years ago. Su Chen pondered for a moment and gave his answer. If according to his own research, the use of the 5 elements escape technique requires finding a soul ring with corresponding attributes, Su Chen would still prefer water for the first ring. Water attribute ninjutsu is not like the fire attribute and thunder attribute which are in the extreme offensive direction, nor is it like the earth escape which is more defensive. The overall balance is relatively balanced. There are powerful offensive ninjutsu such as water dragon bullets, and there are also inferior hydration jutsu. It is called an elemental bug defense ninjutsu. The most important thing is that Su Chen wants to try if he can use the characteristics of the soul ring to integrate the bleeding limit. Among them, the simplest, and certainly one of the most powerful, would escape as a fusion of water escape and earth escape. Since earth escape has many limitations, the first choice for the first level is naturally water escape. A water attribute spirit beast that is 4 to 6,000 years old. Ghost Douluo pinched his chin and nodded, no problem. Wait 4 to 6,000 years. Isn't this your second ring? He looked at Su Chen in shock. Did that master say that the limit of the second ring should be 900 years? The second ring is 4 to 6,000 years old, so where can I put my fourth ring? Any questions? Su Chen looked at him doubtfully. My first ring is 3,000 years. Isn't the second ring between 4,000 and 6,000 years a reasonable range? Ghost Douluo suddenly fell silent. He suddenly remembered that common sense was useless when it came to the monster in front of him. According to Su Chen, this year is indeed quite reasonable. That's why it's only reasonable to put it on him. Forget it, this kid knows it well. This time, it was Ju Douluo who comforted him. You see, he didn't even ask for a 10,000-year soul ring, right? Ghost Douluo, thank you so much. The second link is 10,000 years. Will we titled Douluo survive? Let's look for it. Finish the search and leave early. There is no result from what happened last time. Yu Guan patted Gui Mei's shoulder, his expression a little serious. He was talking about the last time when the Linwu Silkworm and the Millennium Wolf clan appeared at the outermost edge. Later, the Spirit Hall sent people to investigate, but found nothing. Su Chen also remembered that he seemed to feel locked by some powerful existence last time, but because there were too many things to do, he forgot about it. It shouldn't matter, right? Two titled Douluo, even if the Titan Giant Ape and the Sky Blue Bull Python come out together, whether they can beat them or not is another matter, and there will be absolutely no problem in running away. Unless those fierce beasts come out together. But that is unlikely. At this moment, they should be lying in the Great Fierce Land to suck the Tianmeng Ice Silkworm. How could they have time to come out and trouble him? Okay, then we will look for them separately, but not too far away. Little Su Chen, follow me. Ghost Douluo nodded, grabbed Su Chen's shoulder, and flew deep into the forest. The two spread their mental power and carefully searched for soul beasts one by one. At the same time, deep in the Xingdu Great Forest, the almost substantial spiritual energy of heaven and earth turned into a blue light that enveloped this area. The clear lake was sparkling, and it was extremely beautiful under the reflection of the colorful sunlight. Countless rare and exotic flowers grew luxuriantly here, competing for beauty, and slowly stretched their plump bodies in the breeze. This is a treasure land that cannot be described in words. However, in the Xingdu Great Forest where every inch of land is fought for and fighting continues day and night, such a treasure land seems quite peaceful, with birds living safely and fish swimming freely, like a beautiful paradise. Not far from the lake, a round white silkworm-shaped soul beast was carefully moving its body, and its small golden eyes looked at the two snoring behemoths in front of it from time to time. Seeing that its movements seemed to be unnoticed, a drop of cold sweat fell on the smooth head of the silkworm-shaped soul beast, and it breathed a sigh of relief and continued to move forward slowly and firmly. Finally, with its unremitting efforts, it climbed to the other side of the lake. Seeing that the two behemoths were still motionless, the silkworm soul beast couldn't help but grin, and couldn't stop ecstasy in his heart. Is this brother really going to escape this time? Is he going to escape from this dark hell? God knows what kind of life he has lived for so many years. Thinking about the life of being taken as snacks and bullied for thousands of years, he couldn't help but feel sad and his eyes turned red. If I didn't know how to cry, I would be in tears now. Fortunately, today, all this is over. When I escape, I will find a titled Douluo to sacrifice as soon as possible. By then, the mountains are high and the birds fly, and the seas are wide for me to jump. What can you soul beasts do to me? With my assistance, when the titled Douluo becomes a god, none of you who bully me will be able to escape. When he imagined the wonderful things, the silkworm soul beast couldn't help but narrow his eyes and laughed, hee hee. What good things did you think of, Tianmeng? Why are you laughing so happily? A heavy voice came from behind, and Tianmeng answered subconsciously. Of course, I'll kill all of you. But in the next second, it suddenly reacted, its body stiffened, and its head slowly turned back. A giant bear and 3 mastiffs looked at it with teasing eyes, and Tianmeng could even feel the saliva flowing from its mouth, dripping on the hot feeling beside him. Gouda. Tianmeng swallowed and felt a cool air rush from his tailbone to Tianlingai. Boss Shang Shangjun and Boss Chichichiwang, you, the Boss Shang Shangjun, you, the Boss Shang Shangjun, the Boss Shang Shangjun, the Boss Shang Shangjun, the boss with. It trembled, forced a smile on its face, and looked at the 2 behemoths fawningly. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Tianmeng cried in his heart, feeling that his end was near. Is there anything worse than running away and getting caught? That's the 2nd time. Do you want to run away again? The giant bear known as Mr. Shang hugged his paws, sprayed out 2 streams of white air from his nostrils, bared his fangs, and looked at the trembling ice silkworm with danger in his eyes. According to me, this kid can only be eaten by adults. If it doesn't work, we can just share it with a few of our brothers. The Red King shook his 3 heads, his 6 eyes looked at his white and round body with salivation, and his saliva fell on the ground with a hissing sound. That won't work, Lady Bridget said. This kid is very useful. You can only suck it, not eat it. Mr. Shang shook his big head, licked his fangs with his tongue, and said somewhat maliciously, but if you take a few bites, it should be fine, right? Tianmeng, what's the difference between being eaten by you 2 and dying? I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm really going to die. Help, is there anyone who can help me? No, if you can save my life, you will be my brother from now on. It looked at the 2 soul beasts getting closer and closer with trembling fear, and closed its eyes in despair. It seems that my brother's legend is about to end here. However, the expected pain did not come. Just when Tianmeng's mind was spinning, he suddenly felt 2 terrifying auras surge into the sky, causing a large number of soul beasts to scream in agony. What happened? It opened its eyes tremblingly, only to find that Shangjun and Red King seemed to feel something. They looked at each other and each showed a ferocious smile. I didn't expect it to come so soon. Human soul master thief, kill you. The bear's roar and the dog's howl sounded at the same time, and the 2 ferocious beasts turned into violent streams of light and smashed through a large area of trees, quickly disappearing, leaving only Tianmeng shivering in place. After a while, Tianmeng's beady eyes widened instantly after realizing that Shangjun and Red King seemed to be really far away. There are really good people. Without saying a word, his chubby body began to squirm crazily, rushing to the outside at the fastest speed in his life. Until the land filled with spiritual energy disappeared from sight, Tianmeng was still running wildly. I don't know how far it ran, but it suddenly burrowed into the ground, its mental power spread for 100 meters, and it didn't react until it didn't see the pursuers. It escaped. With the help of an unknown soul master, it escaped from that hell. Tianmeng breathed in the dirty air stained with soil in the ground, but he enjoyed it. This is what freedom tastes like. At this moment, Tianmeng Iceworm seemed to be in a dream. Good man, you will be my Tianmeng's eldest brother from now on. Although you may not hear me call you eldest brother, I, Tianmeng, will definitely keep this love in my heart. It was so moved that it bowed in the direction of Shangjun and Red King, and couldn't help but sigh. If I could meet you and become your soul ring, I, Tianmeng, would be willing to do so, but it's a pity. No soul master can survive being chased by 2 ferocious beasts, not even a titled Douluo. Brother, have a good trip. On the outskirts of the big forest, Douluo was holding a dying white snake-shaped soul beast in his hand and talking to the white-haired boy. The latter held his chin, his delicate little face full of thinking. Well, this one is from the wrong year and looks a bit mottled. After observing for a moment, Su Chen shook his head. It's a water attribute, Yes, but there's something else too. Take your time, there is no rush in this matter. Douluo comforted the young man and threw away the spirit beast. After the latter landed on the ground, he struggled to crawl away. We'll see if there are any surprises from the old ghost later. We're looking for the soul beast. It's normal to look for a few days. Su Chen nodded. He was about to say something when he suddenly noticed that Douluo's expression changed. It was a look of fear that had never appeared on the face of this titled Douluo. Su Chen only saw his mouth moving, but did not hear any sound. The next moment, warning signs surged crazily in the young man's heart, and a biting chill filled his whole body. Subconsciously, he activated the substitution and invisibility techniques as quickly as possible in his life. Boom! A dazzling wave of light instantly flooded the young man's location, completely emptying the area into nothingness. A violent roar just started, with trees flying and soil rolling. The young man hid behind a stone in a panic. The huge sound made his ears distorted for a moment. Careful, only then did he hear clearly Douluo's heart-rending shouts. The Stardow forest became completely dark. Ahem. The young man coughed dryly and quickly activated the first soul ring. A layer of white flames surrounded his body, and the scratches on his body were being repaired at an extremely fast speed. With his white eyes opened, he carefully leaned out, and when he saw the scene in front of him clearly, his pupils shrank. It's not that it's dark. Instead, it was a giant bear that covered the sky and completely blocked the sunlight in this area. The giant bear swung its claws easily, and each time it swung, it could stir up a storm and wantonly destroy everything around it. Under it, a golden chrysanthemum was struggling to support itself. As that, Bear King, Su Chen took a breath of cold air. How did this thing get out? Wait, since Bear King has come out, then. He rolled his eyes, and sure enough, he saw a three-headed mastiff with fire spewing from its mouth and nose chasing a ghost not far away. Red King. The white-haired boy's face looked ugly. Bear King, Red King. The second of the 10 fierce beasts. The dark gold fear-claw bear with 480,000 years of cultivation, and the three-headed red demon mastiff with 310,000 years of cultivation. Shouldn't these two be sucking the Tianmeng ice silkworm and protecting the emperor's auspicious beast now? Su Chen suppressed his breath to the lowest, and kept observing the battlefield with his eyes rolling, his mind turning rapidly. The two Douluo of Chrysanthemum and Ghost were obviously not opponents, and the moment the two sides came into contact, they showed a declining trend. This is normal. Even after more than 10 years, these two people can only be regarded as barely able to contain the Azure Bull Python, not to mention that now, the opponent is still a beast far more ferocious than the Azure Bull Python. The most urgent task is to find the reason for their attack. Could it be? Su Chen took out a piece of the flesh of the Linwu silkworm with a gloomy look. Is it because of this? If this is the case, then it makes sense. The last time they locked their breath, it was probably them. It seems that this is the only way. Su Chen took a deep breath and instantly opened the 8 gates of Dunjia. Green energy burst out around him, and his momentum rose, which also attracted the attention of the battlefield. Hey, is this what you were looking for? The boy threw the meat hard, and it flew towards the giant bear. This action attracted several pairs of eyes. It turned out to be you. The giant bear roared to the sky, and the violent sound made Su Chen's head faint for a moment. Fortunately, the boy was well prepared. The herbs in his mouth were crushed by instinct, and a clear feeling dispelled the dizziness. He threw down another piece of Linwu silkworm meat, turned around and ran towards the depths of the forest without hesitation. Eat you! The two terrifying auras instantly locked the boy. At that moment, Su Chen felt the instinctive trembling of his body, which almost made his soul power stagnate for a moment, but fortunately, the chakra quickly turned back, so that the boy did not stop from the rapid sweeping state. Fortunately, his goal has been achieved. Bipolar Forbidden Domain. The golden and silver halo circulated in this space, and both the Bear King and the Red King were wrapped in this layer of glow, and their huge bodies were fixed in midair. The two titled Douluo did not waste the moment of respite that Su Chen fought for, and launched their martial soul fusion skills without hesitation, the static domain that even 100,000-year soul beast could not escape. The young man wiped the sweat from his head. In the 3 seconds just now, he almost used up all his chakra and pushed the dragon's helmet, 8 gates of ninjutsu and instant body technique to the extreme. Otherwise, if he was a step slower, he would end up in pieces. But even so, the crisis was not resolved. Looking at the eyes of Xiangjun and Kai Wang, who kept turning in the golden and silver light, and the pale-faced Zhuge Douluo, Su Chen knew that this field might not be controlled for long. By then, not only him, but also Zhu Douluo and Ghost Douluo would be unable to escape because of the large consumption of soul power. Unless, the young man grinned, and his left and right hands lit up with azure light at the same time. The next moment, in the horrified eyes of Zhuge Douluo, he pressed the Rasengan hard on Xiangjun and Kai Wang's lower body. The air fell into a dead silence for an instant. At this moment, whether it was Mr. Xiang, Red King, or the 2 chrysanthemum Ghost Douluo, their brains all went blank. What happened? What happened? Yu Guan and Gui Mei felt that the sky was about to fall. If they had the chance to stand in front of Su Chen at this moment, they would definitely grab his shoulders, shake him hard, and shout hysterically. What are you thinking? We use this trick to make you run away, not to provoke them to death. Under their somewhat desperate gazes, the golden and silver light on Mr. Xiang and King Red was dimming rapidly. Even if they tried their best to activate it, it would be to no avail. Click. The crisp cracking sound completely hit the bottom of Zhuge Douluo's heart. The two could no longer maintain the two-pole forbidden realm. Their faces were like gold paper, blood spurted from their mouths, and they fell weakly from the air. Ignoring the 2 culprits who made him unable to move and the young man who escaped from the attack, the 2 giant beasts inspected their lower bodies in fear. As we all know, no matter how powerful a male is, his lower body is extremely fragile. This principle also applies to 100,000-year soul beasts. Therefore, even if you know that the attack cannot break through their defense, you will still feel fear instinctively. After they checked several times and found that nothing was wrong, they breathed a sigh of relief, and then they became furious towards a certain silver-haired kid. Ho! I will tear you apart. Amidst the shocking roars and howls, 2 violent and terrifying auras instantly spread for thousands of meters. Wherever they passed, whether they were humans or spirit beasts, they all rolled their eyes and fainted. At this moment, the entire perimeter was trembling under the overwhelming power of the 2 ferocious beasts. Now, all the attention should be on me, right? You 2 elders, please give me some strength. In the distance, the silver-haired boy wiped the sweat from his forehead, listened to the roar containing endless anger, and nodded with satisfaction. But his expression didn't relax at all. Because he knew that the real test had just begun. I don't want to die here so hastily. Boom. A distance of several hundred meters can be reached in an instant for a 100,000-year-old soul beast. Like 2 speeding locomotives, carrying the power of destruction, crushing and tearing everything in their path. Where's that kid? Mr. Xiang was breathing heavily from his nostrils, his eyes were blood red, and after scanning for a moment, he spotted a galloping silver shadow on the left. Want to run? It smiled ferociously, pursed its lips, and signaled the 3-headed mastiff to cut off his retreat. Mr. Xiang didn't want this human to die too happily. He must feel the ultimate despair. However, the Red King also turned around at the same time and sent the same signal to it. The 2 beasts looked at each other in confusion, looking in their respective directions, only to find 2 silver shadows galloping in different directions. No, more than 2. Xiangjun and Red King opened their mental powers and were shocked to find. There were dozens of figures with exactly the same aura, running wildly in different directions. What is this? Xiangjun and Red King were a little dumbfounded. It's not like they've never seen the confusing ability of clones before, but this is the first time they've seen the same aura and soul power fluctuations. Only, boom, the mountain-like body appeared 100 meters away like lightning, and the huge claws struck down. The 2 silver-haired teenagers had no time to dodge, and they instantly turned into smoke and disappeared. Ha ha ha. Mr. Xiang licked his fangs and looked at the other shadows that were still running wildly, showing a cruel smile. The insect is struggling. Do you think you can escape like this? It's a bit too naive. While breathing, several more figures were bitten into pieces by the bear's paws and canine teeth, and disappeared into smoke. Boy, you will experience something more terrifying than death. Amid the cruel laughter, Su Chen's shadow clones disappeared one by one. It's just that they didn't notice it, or didn't pay attention to it at all. In the corner, a wooden pile was rolling towards the depths of the forest with a strange trembling. Old Ghost, what should I do? At the edge of the messy battlefield, Douluo and Ghost Douluo were leaning against each other in embarrassment. Their breath was weak and their bodies were in dilapidated condition. They had long lost their former extraordinary appearance. That kid's for us. Yu Guan's nose felt sore and she looked at the ghost helplessly. The latter remained silent. As early as when the two ferocious beasts desperately chased Su Chen and ignored them, the two of them understood his intentions. But this made them even more worried. No, I have to save him. After a while, Douluo wiped his eyes and stood up, with a determined look on his miserable face. That child must not die. He is the hope of His Majesty the Pope and the future of Wuhun Palace. Ghost Douluo nodded, but slowly clenched his fists. Old Ghost, you first find a way to pass the news to His Majesty the Pope, and then come and join me. Yu Guan patted his old friend's shoulder and smiled freely. If this kid dies, it's not shameful to live, is it? As for whether Su Chen could persist in the rescue, the two of them did not doubt or think about this issue. They firmly believe that teenagers can create miracles. Just like the last few times. Pong. When the last shadow clone turned into smoke and disappeared in the mouth of the Red King, the faces of the two beasts finally became a little ugly. There is no real body. Although the breath and soul power fluctuations of each clone, and even the expression on the face are exactly the same as that kid, there is no doubt that these are all fake. Asshole. The Bear King roared and punched the ground. The terrifying shock wave instantly destroyed everything within 100 meters. Don't worry, he can't run away. The 6 eyes of the Red King flickered, and the huge mental power locked this area firmly. I don't believe that he can stay in this forest for his whole life. In a bush, the rolling wooden stake finally stopped, and it actually took a breath of cold air in a humane way. This feeling is really uncomfortable. It was Su Chen. When the clones produced by the multiple shadow clones disappear, all senses will be transmitted back to the main body. The advantage is that they can be used for multiple learning and cultivation, and the disadvantage is like now. Within a few seconds, Su Chen experienced the feeling of dying in the claws of bears and the mouths of mastiffs in more than a dozen ways. It was definitely not a wonderful experience. If it were someone with a weak spirit, he would have fainted long ago. But fortunately, the effect was superb. This A-level forbidden technique from the ninja world bought Su Chen a lot of time even when facing the two fierce beasts, allowing him to use the transformation technique, a ninja technique with the same bug, to leave the battlefield. However, the current situation has not improved much. Shang Jun and Kai Wang will definitely not stay for too long. After all, the Soul Beast Co-Lord Silver Dragon King is still seriously injured and must not have the idea of exposing himself to the Soul Master world in advance. As long as Douluo and Ghost Douluo are fast enough and bring more reinforcements to the big forest, they will be recalled to the great evil place no matter how unwilling they are. With Ghost Douluo's speed, this time will not exceed 3 days. But the most fatal thing is that Su Chen's chakra has almost reached the bottom and he is almost unable to maintain the transformation technique. Once the transformation technique fails, Su Chen will be locked by the two fierce beasts in the first time. Is there no other way but to move forward? Running away is a dead end, but moving forward obviously won't have any good results. It goes without saying what will happen to a human being whose soul power is exhausted in the depths of the forest. Forget it, let's move forward first, huh? The boy who decided to move forward was slightly stunned. In Bai's eyes, there was an extremely huge energy source underground not far away. The visibility here has become quite low. The lush green forest blocks most of the sunlight. Only a few spots and some fluorescent plants emit a faint light. If nothing unexpected happens, he has completely left the edge and reached the outer circle. Within a radius of 100 meters, almost all soul beasts were scared away by the pressure of the Bear King and the Red King. Only the energy source stayed quietly underground. If Su Chen did not have the white eyes that can see through and perceive the flow of energy, he might not be able to find its existence. After all, from a perceptual point of view, there is nothing in that area. What the hell is this? The young man who turned into a wooden stake frowned in his heart. The hugeness of this energy is simply the highest level he has ever seen, even the Bear King and the Red King are not as good as it. In the vision of the white eyes, it is just like a blazing sun. But strangely, Su Chen did not feel any threat from it. The energy index exceeds that of the Bear King and the Red King. The combat power is not as good as that of a 1,000-year soul beast. What the hell? Su Chen looked strange. These two completely contradictory characteristics can actually be concentrated in one creature. It must be said that it aroused the curiosity of the young man as a scholar. If it weren't for the current crisis, Su Chen would definitely find a way to cut a piece to study. Unfortunately, it can only come back later. This situation is not suitable for making trouble. The young man shook his head and rolled twice, but his body suddenly stopped. No, it has a concealment ability that even the Bear King and the Red King can't find, a huge energy source, and low combat power. Isn't this tailor-made for his current situation? Boom, smoke rose, and Su Chen turned from a wooden stake into a little rabbit, jumping towards the destination. The blood-colored eyes were full of fiery looks. Strange, why do I feel like I'm being stared at? Deep underground, the Tianmeng ice silkworm, who was rolling happily, suddenly shuddered. Just now, he seemed to feel a malicious gaze. But he found nothing when he scanned with his mental power. In addition to the two big guys in the edge area who were staring at him, the nearest soul beast was also scared away 1,000 meters away. As for a little rabbit, he subconsciously ignored it. How could my flawless disguise be discovered? Tianmeng Ice Silkworm breathed a sigh of relief, and his round body slid happily. It's not bragging, in terms of mental power and concealment ability, even the monsters in the Great Evil Land are not as good as him. Want to find it, Tianmeng? Unless you have a perspective eye. But haven't Shang Jun and Kai Wang gone back yet? It continued to release mental power carefully, checking the edge area. You are worthy of being my savior of Tianmeng, you can hold on for so long. But that being said, Tianmeng didn't think the savior could survive. As I said, no one can survive under the siege of the two fierce beasts. It's just a matter of time. Brother, don't worry, Tianmeng, will definitely avenge you. After mourning for his brother whom he had never met, Tianmeng turned over comfortably and continued to savor the joy of freedom. He just glanced at it with his mental power and found that there was a little rabbit right above him. The scarlet eyes seemed to be staring at him. Tianmeng's heart tightened, but after a moment, he shook his head in self-mockery. I was really too sensitive. The 100,000-year-old beasts couldn't find me, so how could a little rabbit that wasn't even a soul beast be stronger than them? I'm so envious, if only I could be as free as it. Tianmeng sighed and prepared to change his posture to continue lying dead, but suddenly found something wrong. This is the Xingdu Great Forest, the most dangerous gathering place for soul beasts on the continent. And his position should be on the periphery, where 1,000-year soul beasts and 10,000-year soul beasts often appear. Then the question is, how did a little rabbit that wasn't even a soul beast get into such a dangerous place? Gulp. Tianmeng Ice Silkworm swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and cold sweat dripped from its round forehead. It moved its position carefully, changing its position bit by bit. But what frightened it was that the little rabbit's blood-red eyes also moved slowly with it, and even showed a slightly weird smile on its face. Can see me. This little thing can see me. Tianmeng felt that his soul was surging, his whole body was cold, and his teeth couldn't help but start to chatter. At this moment, it thought of many possibilities. For example, this was an eyeliner sent by the ferocious beast, the incarnation of some strange existence, and so on. No matter which one it was impossible to resist it now. But just when Tianmeng was considering whether he could save his life by going out to offer his loyalty now, the little rabbit suddenly opened his mouth. Don't be nervous, Tianmeng Ice Silkworm, let me in first. It was a clear and bright voice of a young man with a little fatigue in his calmness. Hearing this, Tianmeng Ice Silkworm's extremely anxious heart suddenly calmed down. It really didn't notice the hostility. In that case, can I pretend I didn't see it? Also, don't pretend you didn't see it. I can sense your every move. The Tianmeng Ice Silkworm collapsed immediately, its round body trembling, and the soil in front of it separated, forming a narrow downward passage. The moment the little rabbit jumped in, the soil instantly gathered, as if there had been no changes. What kind of creature are you, a soul beast? This is the first time a creature can see through my existence. As soon as the little rabbit landed, the Tianmeng ice silkworm couldn't help but come up and look at this small creature curiously. The former did not answer it, but just scanned the surrounding environment with blood-red eyes, and asked back, "Are you sure that this place will not be noticed by other beings?" "Of course." The Tianmeng ice silkworm raised its head proudly. "As long as I want to hide, even a 100,000-year soul beast can't do anything to me." "By the way, why are you asking this?" "That's good." Su Chen nodded, and could no longer suppress the severe dizziness in his brain. He reluctantly reached out to cancel the transformation technique and collapsed on the soil powerlessly. Chakra has been squeezed to the limit. If it is 1 second later, he will be forced to cancel the transformation. However, it should be safe now, right? He quickly glanced at the small underground hole in the white silkworm shadow in front of him, and his tense spirit relaxed a little. He felt endless fatigue in his heart, as if he could fall asleep in the next second. Human. The Tianmeng ice silkworm was frightened by this sudden change. Its fat body suddenly crawled back, huddled in the corner, and looked at the silver-haired boy vigilantly. After a while, it found that the boy did not move, so it carefully stepped forward, poked him gently with its round tail, and tentatively asked, "Hey, are you okay?" The silver-haired boy closed his eyes and shook his head slightly. The immortal body is recovering chakra rapidly, and this process will not take too long. As long as he can move independently, he can actively operate the practice method to accelerate the recovery of chakra. As if it realized that he was not a threat at the moment, Tianmeng ice silkworm suddenly became bolder, and its eyes were full of curiosity. "Are you a human or a soul beast? Are you an orc?" "No, human beast." "I know, half human, half beast." Su Chen was very upset after hearing one outrageous question after another. He waved his hand and said unhappily, "Be quiet first, I will tell you when I recover." If he continued to guess, his race would be changed. "Oh," Tianmeng ice silkworm nodded. "Then after you become a rabbit, do you eat grass?" Su Chen, if he was not physically disabled now, he really wanted to knock on that fat head to see if there was water in it. Under the threatening gaze of Su Chen's ominous blood-red Sharingan, Tianmeng iceworm still shut up. But judging from the curious eyes it glanced at Su Chen from time to time, it still didn't give up on those strange questions. It was quite quiet. I don't know how much time passed, but Su Chen's eyelids fluctuated as he was dozing, and he slowly opened them. Su Chen gently clenched his fists and felt the familiar sense of strength. He breathed out lightly and felt a lot more at ease. The chakra was not completely restored, but it was barely enough to release several shadow clones and long-lasting transformation techniques. After this crisis, Su Chen finally realized what his real shortcomings were. That is, the amount of chakra is insufficient. The amount of chakra brought to him by the immortal body is naturally much higher than that of others, and his recovery speed and growth are also much higher than others. However, the immortal human body has not fully awakened, and his own abilities are also very mana-consuming. The dragon's armor has a large improvement rate and is consumed very quickly. At first glance, Baman Dunjia seems to be on the same level as Taijutsu, but the speed at which it consumes chakra is completely consistent with its status as an S-level forbidden art. The other currently available ninjutsu, multiple shadow clones and Rasengan, are only behind the first two. Especially for multiple shadow clones, it is impossible to achieve hundreds or even thousands of clones like Naruto. He does not have the 9 llamas in his body as an infinite battery to power supply. Now that he has been drained, there are at most dozens of them. If he practices magic again in the future, he may become a 5-second real man after being a real man for 30 seconds. But when it comes to the 9 llamas, Su Chen pondered in his heart. The essence of tailed beasts is the aggregation of chakra. The so-called infinite chakra means that the recovery speed exceeds the consumption speed. When Naruto was fighting, Julama was always in his body to help him restore chakra, thereby achieving a good circulation system. So, can this Jinchuriki technology be applied to soul beasts? If it is feasible, even if it is not possible to reach the point of infinite chakra, there will be no problem if you match your own fairy body to turn chakra into chakra, and you can also develop some more powerful combat modes. For example, Tailed Beast Chakra Mode, Sage Tailed Beast Chakra Mode, Majestic Armor Susanoo, etc. Thinking of this, the boy's eyes lit up. If it really works, there is no doubt that he will develop a brand new power system. Did you think of anything good? Are you so happy? The curious voice awoke the young man from his thoughts. Su Chen raised his eyes and saw Tianmeng Bingcan's chubby face staring at him with curiosity. Well, one hypothesis, if it is feasible, then soul beasts and humans may not be able to coexist peacefully. There is no doubt that the Jinchuriki mode is a power system that completely transcends the so-called souls and soul rings. Because this system requires no prerequisites at all, a newborn baby can also become a Jinchuriki. As long as it can communicate and understand the tailed beast in the body, it will have good fighting capabilities. Su Chen thought for a while, nodded. HMPH, just brag. Tianmeng Bingcan rolled his eyes and immediately lost interest. I thought what this guy would say. I didn't expect it to be such an out-of-touch statement. The relationship between soul masters and soul beasts is a very rough supply and demand relationship. This has nothing to do with hatred, let alone stance. Unless the soul masters are willing to be ordinary people and the soul beasts curb their ambitions, no matter how many years pass, the relationship between the two will not ease at all. Speaking of which, who are you? Do you know me? But I have no impression of you. Tianmeng shook his head and asked with some confusion. This kid revealed its identity as soon as they met, but he was not an enemy. But no matter how hard it racked its brains, it couldn't imagine when it would get to know this person. Well, to be honest, I'm quite surprised, Su Chen said with emotion. His original intention was to find this energy source to see if he could extend the hiding time, but after getting closer and seeing the whole picture clearly, he was confused. Isn't this the special Tianmeng ice silkworm? Why is it here? But if you think about it carefully, it seems that there is only one Tianmeng ice silkworm in the entire Douluo world who can meet the conditions of strong energy but low combat power at the same time. This one of the protagonists 10,000 years later, a million-year-old soul beast with rare dual attributes of ice and spirit, and possessing wisdom, is essentially just a lucky guy who stole a lot of natural and earthly treasures. But this cannot cover up the huge role of Tianmeng ice silkworm. It can be said that at least 60% of Huo Yuhao's future achievements are due to this silly-looking silkworm baby. He once considered whether to cut off his hair in advance, but gave up after calculating the time. I didn't expect to meet him in such a place. By the way, how did you escape? Su Chen raised his eyebrows and asked. At this point in time, this excellent treasure of heaven and earth should be still being treated as a sucker by the ferocious beasts in the land of great evil. He is not even qualified to go to the 300,000-year soul beasts in the core circle. That kind of thing. Hey, speaking of that, Tianmeng Bingcan swayed happily and said with some excitement, its eldest brother. If eldest brother hadn't attracted the attention of Mr. Shang and King Kai, I wouldn't have been able to escape. Big brother, Su Chen slowly typed a question mark. Is there such a person? Why can't he remember what big brother was mentioned in the original novel? He's a human, but not an ordinary human, and King Red and Lord Shang haven't caught him yet. The Tianmeng ice silkworm's bean eyes were twinkling with starlight. If it had four limbs, it would probably be holding its hands and wagging its tail at this moment. Brother is simply a Superman. If he survives, he will become a god. I, Tianmeng, will follow him to the death. Su Chen's expression became weirder and weirder the more he listened. If your eldest brother, survives, how will you follow him? He asked. HMPH, boy, do you think I am some ordinary soul beast? Tianmeng Bingshan hummed proudly. Brother is the only 990,000-year-old soul beast in the entire continent. As long as eldest brother is close to a breakthrough, I can take the initiative to sacrifice and become his wise soul ring. This is really. Su Chen couldn't laugh or cry. It turns out that I accidentally became this guy's savior. But it has nothing to do with you, a 20-level kid. It said in an old-fashioned way. By the way, you haven't answered me yet. How do you know my name? How did you get here at level 20? You. The round ice silkworm asked, his heart suddenly thumped. Yes, that's right. How could he, who is level 20, end up in a place like this? It first looked at Su Chen, who was in tatters, and its mental power spread to the distance, and then looked at the two ferocious beasts lying motionless in the edge area. When I think about it, the first thing the young man said when he came in was whether the aura could be perfectly concealed here, plus he looked like he had just fought a battle. Gouda. Looking at the young man's eyes that looked like a smile but not a smile, Tianmeng Bingcan swallowed. It looked at Su Chen tremblingly. Shang, Mr. Shang and King Red are chasing you. Isn't it you? But this is impossible. Before Su Chen answered, Tianmeng Ice Silkworm shook its head like a rattle. You are only level 20, how could you survive those two monsters? No, 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 impossible, impossible, in short, impossible. Tianmeng seemed to have convinced himself. It squeezed out a smile, pretending to be calm. Young man, I admit that you are indeed very powerful, but you know this kind of thing, even a titled Douluo is impossible. Its voice stopped abruptly. A deliberately suppressed soul power fluctuation quietly emitted, and the pale white energy brushed against the face. Tianmeng Ice Silkworm instinctively felt comfortable all over, as if the fatigue and depression of the past few days were relieved a lot. But Tianmeng Ice Silkworm didn't care about this fascinating feeling at the moment. The golden bean eyes shrank to the size of a needle tip, staring at the silver-haired boy in front of him. Or in other words, the soul ring on his body that exuded purple light. The first soul ring of 1,000 years. At this moment, the worldview of the silkworm was greatly impacted. The only first ring of 1,000 years. He didn't even have a second soul ring. But how is this possible? Tianmeng's lips trembled. He wanted to continue saying it was impossible, but the ironclad facts were in front of him. No matter how absurd it was, he had to believe it. But soon, he realized that his worldview had collapsed too early. In the next 2 minutes, the silver-haired boy showed him what a monster was. There were dozens of clones that were no different from the original body. Tianmeng concentrated his mind to the maximum extent, but he couldn't tell the difference between the original body and the clone. No matter how he explored, his soul power fluctuations and life levels were exactly the same. And the strange ability to turn into a little rabbit, the silver-haired boy also turned into blue-silver grass, flowers and the like. When he turned into the corresponding form, the aura on his body also changed at the same time. It was as if it was a rabbit or a wooden stake. If you don't concentrate on checking, you can't detect the slight difference at all. But who would pay attention to a blue-silver grass that can be seen everywhere in the Stardew Great Forest? Until the boy turned into a round and chubby silkworm, Tianmeng Ice Silkworm was completely numb. It deeply realized the horror of this ability. Unless one has extremely strong perception ability, or the ability of perspective similar to the boy, this ability of change is simply unsolvable. Tianmeng finally understood why the silver-haired boy in front of him could escape from the pursuit of the two monsters. Because he himself is a more perverted monster than them. Big brother. Without hesitation, Tianmeng Ice Silkworm lowered his posture. This call of Big Brother, it called sincerely. Its lifesaver is not a titled Douluo, but the future achievements are definitely more than titled Douluo. Becoming a god. Tianmeng Ice Silkworm felt for the first time that this distant word was so close to itself. If a monster like Big Brother can't become a god, then it is estimated that no one in this world can become a god. Get up, don't do this. Su Chen reached out to help Tianmeng up, patted its head, and nodded with satisfaction. At this moment, Tianmeng obviously did not develop the profit-oriented and cunning character that he would have 10,000 years later. There was even some naivety and clear stupidity in his curiosity about everything. After he showed enough talent and the cause and effect of saving his life, he completely returned to his heart. If it was 10,000 years later, it would probably not be so easy. At that time, some coercion, inducement, or other means would be inevitable. Forbidden ninjutsu such as tongue root disaster. Of course, if possible, Su Chen did not want to use coercion on such an intelligent life that he lived with day and night, which would only lay the seeds of disaster for the future. Although he could completely control it, could such a soul ring still be called a wisdom soul ring? In the current situation, it was naturally the best. Brother, I am of course very happy to sacrifice, but in this process, my mental concealment ability will also fail, so it is better to. After the joy, the chubby face of Tianmeng Bingcan, who had calmed down, was a little serious. It looked at Su Chen seriously. Because of my soul power, your magical transformation ability may also reveal flaws in a short period of time. Since it has decided to follow Su Chen, it is necessary to consider how to break the situation now. In Tianmeng's opinion, it is best to hide here and not act rashly. As long as time is long enough, the two guys will naturally go back. Being a natural treasure in the great evil land for so long, it also knows some secrets. Unexpectedly, the boy shook his head and refused. No, we have to leave here as soon as possible. Before deciding to absorb Tianmeng's ice silkworm, hiding is definitely the best way, but if it is collected as a soul ring, then this method will not work. No matter what, the Linwu silkworm is just a 1,000-year soul beast, and the Shangjun and the Kai Wang chasing him is nothing more than a face problem. But Tianmeng ice silkworm is different. Its importance to the great fierce land is not at the same level as Linwu silkworm. Unless he can stay here for hundreds or thousands of years like Tianmeng, the beasts will not give up. At that point, even the spirit hall will have to give up on him. Even if he takes it out, how can he absorb it naturally? Even a Douluo like Qian Daoliu who has already broken through the limit would be tempted to approach a million-year-old soul beast. As long as there is a slight flaw, everything managed in the spirit hall will collapse, and Su Xiao will also be implicated. Therefore, solving the problem here is the best choice. Tianmeng, I won't force you to follow me. If you don't want to, I will leave on my own when my soul power recovers. Su Chen pondered for a moment, looked at the pair of small eyes shining with golden light, and said seriously. Stay here, you are safe. Tianmeng ice silkworm was silent after hearing this. Of course it knew that it was safe here. As long as it didn't go out, unless the beasts turned the entire forest upside down, otherwise, even after thousands of years, they would not find it. But after seeing the human beings who truly possess the posture of becoming a god, how could it be willing to live in this narrow cave for thousands of years? What about after 10,000 years? Continue to wait. In this life, is there only one choice for itself, lying dead or being forced to lie dead? No, it is not willing. In that case, why not take a gamble? Even if you lose the bet, after becoming a soul ring, it seems that you will really die if you lose the bet. Tianmeng ice silkworm instinctively felt a little scared. It shrank back 2 steps, but its body stopped again. A moment later, the ice silkworm met the boy's gaze. Brother Hu, can you tell me your name? Well, my name is Su Chen. Hello, Brother Su Chen, I am Tianmeng. It took a deep breath, and its body suddenly became a little illusory. The huge and terrifying soul power fluctuation slowly rose, turning into a brilliant stream of light like a galaxy, rushing towards the boy. Brother Su Chen, hurry up. I'm afraid I will regret it. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.